Hello and welcome to another episode of the Uncommon Energy Podcast. On this week's episode, we'll be chatting about some brand new cards that were just revealed from a few different Japanese sets that we'll hopefully be getting over here in the western part of the world before too long. We'll talk about some results from some tournaments that took place over in Asia, one in Japan, one in Indonesia, chat about that. Of course, tournaments that did happen with the new current format that we will be playing for EUIC this weekend. We'll, of course, have Guess That Flavor Text, everyone's favorite segment of the podcast. And then we'll break down our meta prediction and do our meta discussion about the European International Championships, which are taking place this weekend in London. Got some exciting news for the podcast as well. We are now officially sponsored by Dragon Shield. If you don't know, Dragon Shield makes the best sleeves and just other various gaming products in the game, to be honest. Azul and I have both used their sleeves for a long time before we were sponsored by Dragon Shield. We've both individually worked with Dragon Shield, so we're excited to now be working with them in regards to the podcast specifically. So big thanks to Dragon Shield for being a sponsor. I mean it when I say it. The best sleeves in the game. The only ones that either of us ever used for tournaments at any level at all. My name, by the way, is Chip Ritchie, and I'm joined here, as always, by my friend and co-host, Azul GG, who is already across the pond. Azul, what's happening, man? How we doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Super excited to be sponsored by Dragon Shield, of course. Like Chip said, best sleeves in the game. I've tried, every other sleeve out, but I always come back to Dragon Shield. So I'm super excited to have been working with them the last year or so, and then to be having them as a sponsor on the podcast is super sick. I'm super excited to be to working with them. So yeah, I'm over in London already. Pretty tired. Just got in today. So I've been took a nap earlier. I actually got hit pretty hard. I usually feel like when I land, I'm like fine. The day I get to like international travel, I didn't sleep too much on the plane though, so there was that. So I did take a nap there. I'm feeling okay. I'll probably crash after this. It's like 2:30 a.m. for me right now. So if now I'm the one who's on the late side of things, whereas it's usually Chip when I'm on the West Coast. But yeah, just getting prepped for EUIC this weekend. Excited for it. And yeah, excited to play the new format. Super nice to not have to worry about or not to have to deal with the last format, not to play the last format ever again. That was just unbearable for the most part. Pretty much the whole way through, I was not a fan of it. So I'm super excited for rotation to hit. Got the new set. Yeah, looking forward to this weekend for sure.
Yes, Azul, finally, I get my revenge. You have to be the one up in the wee hours of the morning recording the podcast. But yeah, big shout outs to Azul, by the way, for being able to stay up and make this work. It's really the only time I can record is at night after the baby goes to bed. So shout outs to Azul saying, we got to make this work. So I'm going to just tough it out and stay up super late. But yeah, Azul's over there in London. I'm unfortunately not going to be in London for this one. Pretty bummed to be missing out on this one, though. I was kind of upset that I didn't get to go to London for Worlds this past year. It was for a good reason because my child was born. So I was like happy to be home for that reason, but it was bummed out that I missed out on London. So I was really hoping to get to go to this one. Unfortunately, didn't work out though. But I'm excited to tune in and watch the broadcast. I'm going to be trying to catch just about as much of it as I can and hopefully get to see Azul win a third international championship in less than 12 months. That'd be pretty sick, man. So rooting for you. We'll see if you can make it happen.
Yeah, it'd be pretty sick. Yeah, it'd be quite a tall order, but it's definitely possible. Got a little bit of time to grind games and hopefully come up with something better than Lost Box, but it might be tough. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll talk more about the EUIC meta in a bit.
Yeah.
But one thing I did actually, I guess as well, before we get too much into it, just while we're talking about this, maybe you can just give some of your thoughts on like what it feels like to prepare for this turn. Like, because I know you've always said your favorite Pokemon format is the next format. You really enjoy like the new format and trying to come up with new cards, new interactions, new like things for the format to work out, right? New different unique strategies. We haven't been able to do that for a long time now. So what has it felt like for you kind of like exploring this new set and how it is shaking up the metagame and especially with the rotation thrown into the mix as well?
I mean, it feels pretty good so far. I haven't actually had that much time to play too much Pokemon, to be honest. I'm gonna probably play more games than I played in the format tomorrow or later today than I have the rest of Sun Scarlet and Violet's release, unfortunately. Um, so it definitely feels nice to just be able to play more decks, though. I feel like last format, there wasn't. You just kind of played a bunch of decks that like you either had a slightly unfavorable matchup for Lugia, or slightly favored, or most likely a 50-50, and then you kind of just dirtled around against the other decks in the format, and it just kind of felt like there was no evolution of the meta at all, which I don't think you want to see. It was like Lugia was constantly 30 to 40% of the meta and just kind of stayed there. But I think we've already seen some kind of natural evolution of this meta so far. We haven't been part of all of it, at least in North America and Europe, or even Latin America as well. It's just been kind of Japan, in general, has been like the most of the natural evolution of the meta. Like we saw, like Los Antino was super hyped up early on. Miraidon was hyped up early on. Neither of those decks have done well at any of the major tournaments so far. Are they great? There's been like maybe one in top 16. One of them did win. Miraidon did win like the last major tournament. It's just like that's its only placement, right? There was one in top 16. It did win the tournament, but I don't think that's a great indication of like Miraidon being broken or anything. So it does feel like the meta is evolving, and a lot of these decks are just really powerful, which is cool to see, as opposed to just being like Lugia is broken and everyone is just like can't keep up. So it definitely seems like there is room for other decks to kind of push for maybe being the most popular deck in the meta, or just kind of more of a natural evolution of the meta where like decks will go in and out of being the most popular or seemingly the best deck for a tournament, and then the next tournament they're maybe not quite as good.
Well, that's what makes for a healthy metagame as well, something that's constantly changing
Yeah.
and evolving, and it's just unfortunate whenever there's something that just dominates for so long. But we've complained enough about Lugia the last 6 months. Let's focus on the positives here. Focus on the future, and we can start doing that by chatting about some new card reveals. These are things that have come out over the last few weeks. We have had so much to talk about the last few weeks, though, that we haven't really had a chance to mention everything. But a few cards that have been revealed over in Japan from 3 sets. The first one being Pokemon card 151, which is meant to be like I guess like a celebration of the original 151 Pokemon. It's going to be some sort of mini set. So I imagine when we get it over here, it'll be like a subset type thing, a collector's set, like a Champion's Path sort of thing. If I had to guess, Crown Zenith, that type of thing. And then the other set of cards are going to be from Snow Hazard and Clay Burst, which are cards that should be in our NAIC set, right? Azul, something like that.
Wait for the 151 or the
No, for the the Snow Hazard and Clay
that one comes
Burst.
out. That's supposed to be our June 9th set.
Okay.
I think. I don't know. The 151, it says it comes out in Japan on June 16th. So this would we get this for like Worlds. It would be like a Pokemon Go set for Worlds for us, I feel like.
Yeah.
So I don't think we have a World set this year, unfortunately, because of how things have been kind of pushed back still.
So maybe this though would be the thing. So but
Well,
yeah,
yeah, I mean, it's not. We don't have. It's not a World set though. It's just kind of like one of the mini set. Like I wouldn't call it. It would be this set that gets released before Worlds, but I wouldn't call it. It's not like when we got um, Mewtwo and Mew V Union before 2019 World, something like that.
Tag team, yeah.
Yeah, tag team. So it's a little bit different than something like that. But
For sure.
Oh no, it wasn't tag team. Tag team is when we got Pikarom. We had Pikarom before.
Yeah, but we got Mewtwo and Mew tag team came out right before Worlds
The
2019 is
Pokemon,
what you're talking
the tag
about.
team.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this will be like a Pokemon Go kind of shakeup, which isn't very much. So I'm hoping that some kind of full set releases before Worlds, but I don't think it works with the time frame at all, right? If we get a set on June 9th, there's no way we get one before Worlds.
No, yeah, probably
August.
not. Though the one coming out on June 9th, I mean, that is just like 2 months after this set came out, right? So we have all of April, all of May, and then the beginning of June. So it
Yeah.
is a little bit quicker than what it has been normal. Maybe trying to catch back up to that original kind of normal 3-month
Yeah,
time
hopefully, because it would have
frame.
been nice like if Scarlet and Violet had came out sooner, and then what's called have been pushed back like a month. Clay Burst, Snow Hazard, whatever Paldea Evolved is what I think it's called for us.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So hopefully, if that had come out, instead of June, come out in May, and then we got a set in early August for Worlds. But maybe we'll get to that kind of time frame next year. We'll see. I'm not sure what the plans are for that moving forward or anything, but it'll be pretty cool. Because in the past, it's always felt good to have that Worlds set. It kind of I think it adds the highest level of like competition to Worlds, because some formats already get played out and are kind of stale. I think we saw it last year's Worlds, where I'm not saying like it eliminates some players' potential to do well, but I think a higher skill ceiling in a tournament where a new set drops, because it's not just play or like fundamentals that are as important, and maybe like the little nuance things, but like coming up with whole new archetypes and strategies and stuff is a little bit more. There's a more depth to the game to be taken advantage of. So it'd be cool to see it. Maybe next Worlds have a full set release, but just before Worlds. But I mean, there's only going to be NAIC with the Paldea Evolved set, so that will be pretty fresh even going into Worlds. There'll be a lot of still hopefully a lot of potential.
Yeah. Well, let's chat about the cards from Pokemon Card 151. I can't imagine that that's the name they'll go with when it comes out in English. It just doesn't really roll off the tongue, you know. But
Maybe like
yeah.
original 151 or something.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see. We'll see what they do. But yeah, there's really not only a few cards that have gotten revealed so far, and it's just the original Kanto starters, right? The Blastoise, wow, the Bulbasaur, Charmander, Squirtle, the Pikachu, of course, and then we did get a whole evolution line, and this is a pretty big one for a couple of reasons. The Alakazam EX, this evolution line, first off, because it's the first Kadabra that has been printed in 20 years. I'm pretty sure the last Kadabra came out in 2003. It was in Skyridge. And then we have not had another Kadabra since then. For anyone who doesn't know, it has to do with some big lawsuit with a magician called Uri Geller. You can read all about it online. We're not going to go super in depth with it here, but pretty much just in 2020, Uri Geller decided, you know what? I'm done with that. I want Pokemon to make their Kadabra cards. Pokemon has never really officially referenced that is why they were not making Kadabra cards, but it's kind of just a known thing, I feel like. And Pokemon did not do anything to celebrate the fact that Kadabra is getting printed again. It's just kind of like, yep, here it is. And
Well, I mean, what if they were like sitting on this set? They were like, we're going to do a 151 set as soon as we can make Kadabras again. What if they've just been waiting? And
they've
now
been
it's just like,
planning
okay,
this since 2004, right?
yeah, and now there's like, oh, okay, we can do this. Then we'll do it with the X's. Who cares? Like, it's actually possible, right? Like, maybe this is like one of their ideas they've had, and now all of a sudden that it's like they can use Kadabra again. They're like, okay, then we'll just do this now. Maybe they had a different idea that they're going to push back for, another mini set next year or the year after or something.
But
Because they had a lot of time, right? Because it was late 2022, so they've had like 2 years to potentially make these cards.
Yeah. They've been sitting on it,
Yeah.
made it work. But here is the Alakazam EX. The only we got the Mew as well we can talk about. But Alakazam EX, kind of interesting here. It's got 310 HP. It is a stage 2 EX Pokemon, of course. It has the Mind Jack attack for 2 colorless. It does 90 damage plus 30 more damage for each of your opponent's benched Pokemon. And then Dimensional Manipulation for 2 Psychic. It does 120 damage, and this Pokemon can use this attack even when it is on the bench, which is pretty cool because that is, I'm pretty sure, that is something that has never been done in the game before. So this is the first time a Pokemon can attack from the bench.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting too how they've kind of changed around. I feel like we've had these weird one-off effects. They've recently in like the last 2 years or so, maybe like switched it over to where instead of that effect being on like an ability, it's on the Pokemon itself. I'm trying to think of like a good comparison for that. But I think we had a Pokemon recently that said, I can't even remember. But I remember at one point where I read an attack, I was like, oh, they're tying this into the attacks instead of the abilities. Like, where I feel like they've done that in the past, where it's like, it's just because it feels weird. Like if you initiate the attack, it feels weird that you go to the effect. You always do the effects of attacks first, but then you go to the effect to use it so that I can attack from the bench. It feels a little off. Whereas if I had an ability that said this Pokemon can attack even while on the bench, that would almost feel better. And in the past, I think that's how stuff has generally worked for things that are kind of weird like this. But I think it's correct to have it kind of tied to the attack. Like overall, it just feels weird.
Well, it makes sense too because you can do more with the Pokemon, right? Like if you gave this thing an ability, it would only have one ability, one attack. Because you tie that into the attack, it can also have an additional attack, right?
I mean, in recent years, there's nothing wrong with a Pokemon having 2 attacks and ability though. But Pokemon
they just haven't done that in a long time.
Yeah, Pokemon's been limiting like the amount of active whatever effects on a Pokemon attacks or abilities to 2 for quite a while. What was the last time something had 3? I can't even remember. I'm sure there's something that's not too
not too long ago.
Recent. But it's definitely interesting. The cool new kind of effect, and there's a couple things you can use this with: Klefki, Empoleon, even Ting Lu. When Ting Lu's in the active, it prevents your opponent's Pokemon that are not EXs that have damage counters on them from using their abilities. So you can sit there with Alakazam and just kind of ping stuff, and then like do solution or something to set up the Ting Lu to
just
shut stuff
wait.
down.
Ting Lu supremacy. Here he comes. He's taking over.
Alakazam.
Ting Lu Kazam.
Yeah, but that's definitely an interesting one, and we've only seen a little bit of this set, so it's possible it was a little bit better than I'm kind of currently giving it credit for. So we'll have to wait and see what the whole 150 looks like. But the only other EX that's been revealed is the Mew EX, 180 HP, basic Pokemon, of course. Ability reset. Once on your turn, you may draw cards until you have 3 in your hand. So Instruct, for anyone who played Guru back in the day, is coming back on the Mew. And it isn't limited, so you could do this multiple times with multiple Mews. And then it's got the Genome Hack attack for triple colorless. Choose one of your opponent's active Pokemon's attacks and use it as this attack. So I feel like Mew is kind of going back to kind of its roots, where I felt like it was always kind of more like a utility Pokemon. I think the only other time we've seen Mew that I can think of, where not the tag team, the only other time I can think about Mew being truly kind of like top tier was like Mew Trick back in 2006, 2007. Yeah, and then besides Mew EX, or Mew, what is it, Mew VMAX that we just had. But now I feel like this Mew EX, it's got a good ability, it's got a solid attack, but it's like nothing broken, which I kind of like for sure.
Yeah, I mean, this is the type of card that might see play at some point. It could be played just for the ability. I think that's unlikely. We did just have Cricketune V in the format. Actually,
Which
Cricketune
does the
V
same thing.
is still in the format. Yeah, Cricketune V is still in format.
Yeah, Cricket's getting pushed out already. It's still in the
Yeah.
format. It's basically getting rotated with Mew drops.
Yeah, and it's even a little better because you can draw up to 4 if it's in the active spot, right? And then, but you can only use 1 Cricketune per turn.
Cricketune plus Mew combo.
Yeah. Yeah, there's your combo for sure.
Mew
But no, I
first,
could
then
definitely
Cricketune
see
after.
like this is just like a decent card that will probably be played at some point. It's not broken by any means, and I don't think it's gonna like take over, but yeah, it's definitely solid. We got a couple trainer cards here as well. We can chat about Safety Goggles. The basic Pokemon this card is attached to has no weakness, so they decided to go with a new tool card as opposed to just reprinting weakness policy, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, I think they want to give some strength because like the stage 2 Pokemon are just definitely way stronger than basic Pokemon right now, right? So trying to give some strength, and I like really strong tool cards like this. I like really strong stadiums. I like really strong tool cards, as long as there's not just one really strong stadium or one really strong tool card, like we've seen in the past with stuff like I don't know. I'm trying to think about like a stadium off the top of my head, like Giant Hearth and Chaotic Swell were the only 2 stadiums that were played for a while. Like some there's a little Viridian Forest,
yeah.
Or like when Muscle Band was a tool card, it was like you played Muscle Band and that's it. Like you maybe played Floatstones because Floatstone was broken as well, but you could have also played Switch if Floatstone didn't exist. So yeah, I like really strong tool cards, but I like the limiting factor here of just the basic Pokemon because I think it'll allow it to be almost more powerful. And not kind of a get out of jail free card for like every deck in certain situations, but it'll allow potentially basic Pokemon to kind of thrive and be able to go up against stuff like the heavy HP, heavy power stage 2 EXs. So I think it's a good balance card.
And then we have Giovanni's Charisma. Put an energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon into their hand. If you do, put an energy from your hand to your active Pokemon. So it's like a energy excel plus disruption. But this is one of the situations where it's like it almost feels like there's too many qualifiers going on here for this card to work, right? Like it can always be a disruption card, which is good, but it can't always be an energy acceleration card, right?
Yeah, you should be able to get it if you play this alongside like a draw engine, like a B barrel or like a Rever Room. I think you'd be able to get it there to be pretty consistent with getting your energy into play. This card's interesting. Yeah, it's like the thing is like energy acceleration in Pokemon is super good when it's available. There are like some situations like Flaffy where it's like Flaffy was kind of on the back burner for a long time and had like a couple showings here and there, still in the format, so it can still kind of do its thing. But energy acceleration is always super strong, or attacking for very little energy is super strong. Like look at like Sablezard or Zoroark back in the day for just a double a DCE. Like all that's is either attacking with very little energy super strong, or having some form of energy acceleration is super strong. So like energy disruption in general is kind of hard to make work. So and it doesn't feel like it really sits as like a great control card either, because like control decks don't really ever need to accelerate their own energy. And we did just get Team Star Grunt, which puts the energy
On
somewhere
top
else.
of their deck, I
Yeah,
think.
so it's even better, right? So like Team Sarkon's just better than Giovanni's Charisma for like control decks, I would say.
Yeah, Team Star Grunt puts
Um,
it on top of their deck. This is most
yeah,
similar to Team Yell Grunt, which we just had rotate out of the form. Or Team
yeah.
Yell's, yeah, Team Yell Grunt. Yeah, Team Yell's
But doesn't
Cheer
Team
is a different card that's still in the format, but
yeah. So I don't think this card seems like great to like maybe see play in some kind of control deck, or if energy like maybe a rotation from now, energy acceleration kind of gets. I don't know, maybe a couple sets from now it's even possible that energy acceleration is just not very good based on what else is good in the format, and then at that point we could see something like the Team Yelgrunt being good, or not the Team Yelgrunt, the Giovanni's Charisma.
yeah.
But yeah, it's right now it's feeling pretty mid.
Yeah. And then one other thing before we move on to the other new cards, something that PokeBeach pointed out here in their article, which is pretty cool, is that all of these artworks seem to reference the locations of their original artwork counterparts. So we've got Bulbasaur, the original base set art. It's in like a field of flowers or something like that. And it just looks like we're seeing the Bulbasaur in a different angle. The Charmander base set is burning a field of grass with his tail on accident. And then the second panel from this new card, it shows Charmander reacting to burning the field of grass. So yeah, it's a lot of that. Pikachu in the forest, of course, Squirtle on the rock, Abra out in the field with the trees. Yeah, pretty cool to see some references to the old school originals.
Yeah, it's all right.
Type of stuff Azul does not care about.
Not really my cup of tea. So we can move on to, I think, the other new cards that are released. So all the cards have now been released for Snow Hazard and Clay Burst, and that'll make up a majority of our SV2 set, Paldea Evolved, alongside the cards that were printed in Triple Beat. So how does Japan set work? They got Triple Beat, and then they got two sets in Clay Burst and Snow Hazard at the same time. Why don't they get the sets? I thought they got the sets separately, but they're getting Clay Burst and Snow Hazard at the exact same time.
No, they usually get two sets at the exact same time, and then when they come out for us, it's combined into one thing. So like the
but they
Triple
also
Beat
have more
stuff,
stuff like Triple Beat then.
Triple Beat is like a mini set for them.
Okay, so
It's
that's what they get.
much
That kind of
smaller.
constantly
This
switches
is a
stuff up.
mainline set, but
Yeah.
anytime they do main sets for the last several years, it's always been two accompanying sets side by side.
Okay, and then we get like one of their small sets plus their two main sets in our set, right?
For the most part, yeah. And then
But we're not
sometimes
even
stuff
guaranteed
gets
to.
like placed in random other different places as well.
Yeah,
So
so we're not guaranteed to get all this stuff, but
that's
we'll
right.
probably get most of it. I think the number one card to talk about to start with is and we kind of didn't see this. This is we're kind of waiting for this when we talked about the other Snowburst Clay or Clayburst Snow Hazard cards is the Wuchien EX to go alongside the Pouchien and Tinglu, right?
You're trying really hard. Pouchien is a new one.
No, Wuchien is the new one.
No, you just made up a new one. Pouchien.
Oh well, no, that's not a new one, but that's the
No, it's
the
Chien
water one.
Pao. It's
Oh,
Chien
Chien
Pao.
Pao. Yeah. I was close. But yeah, Wuchien, 230 HP, basic grass type. For grass colors, it does 60 damage to one of your opponent's best Pokemon for each prize card your opponent has taken. And then for grass colors, it is 220 damage. So the second attack, that's a lot of energy. The first attack isn't very good, but it can kind of be a comeback. And we will talk about a card that it probably combos with pretty well a little bit later on. But yeah, this one seems like the worst of the three, to be honest.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely, it feels a little lacking compared to the other three that we saw. Maybe that's why it wasn't part of the initial reveals. They kind of recognized Wochien's lacking a little bit, but yeah, it does have potential with a card we'll talk about a little later on. I'm gonna try to quickly scroll through here because we definitely don't need to talk about all of these cards, and we've already talked about a few of them. I don't think we talked about Slowking EX. I think that's a new one. It's a new Terra Pokemon. Nothing too crazy on this one, though. It's got Profound Knowledge for one Psychic. It does 30 damage. Your opponent's active is now confused. And then Wisdom Headbutt, 130 damage for two Psychic. You may search your deck for up to two cards and put them into your hand if you do shuffle your deck. So, I mean, card search always seems good, but I mean, I saw someone when talking about this card mention like, everyone's like, oh yeah, you get to search for two cards. And someone was like, we literally just had Togekiss EX or VMAX in the format for forever, which never saw play. And it was better than this because it was colorless. It had free retreat. Like there's so much more going for it. And
yeah, people tried to make it work a couple times, but it was definitely not quite it. And I don't think Slowking is going to be it either. A cool potential control card. Actually, a couple control cards coming up here next, potentially. The first one is the Gothitelle.
Yeah.
Stage 2 with the Astrology ability. Once in your turn, you may look at the top 2 cards of your opponent's deck. If you do, put one of them on the top of the deck and put the other one on the bottom of the deck. So it gives you some top deck control from your opponent or on your opponent. So if you combo this with some kind of hand lock, or like board lock, you like trap something in the active without energy to attack with, or stop something from retreating in the active, and you can control their top deck. You can make it so they can maybe never get to the cards they need to move that Pokemon. Of course, you do need to have some kind of active win condition through milling them or something. But yeah, there's some potential for control here at some point. We just saw Sander, last format before rotation playing Orbeetle in like an Orbeetle, Gardevoir, Wheezing control type deck. So Gothitelle could be the next Chip Ice Axe wannabe and be in a control deck.
Then we got a Mimikyu here with Safeguard. Prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by attacks from your opponent's Pokemon EX and Pokemon V. So yeah, this is a pretty interesting one. It's a Safeguarder for the 2 different Pokemon we have right now in the format, the ultra rare Pokemon we have right now in the format. I've had a lot of funny interactions with people and even like online playing with Miltank in discussions where people are like, oh, why don't you just play Miltank? It auto wins Miraidon. And it's like, Miraidon's an EX and Miltank only blocks damage from Vs. So I literally had an opponent on TCG Live go lone Miltank against me with my Miraidon deck for like thinking that they had just won the game. They were just going draw, pass, draw, pass, draw, pass. And it just took me 3 turns. And I eventually got, I like needed to draw into the one more switch in my deck or something like that. And then I eventually just played the switch or the escape rope and knocked it out with Miraidon. It was like, okay.
Lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like them. I actually like cards like this in general because I think it keeps you kind of honest, right, with your deck building and stuff like that, and gives like potential for, even though like I feel like people kind of feel like this probably about like stuff like Wheezing, because people kind of hating on Wheezing towards the end of the last format as well. Or so if you go Boost Shake into Wheezing, you could just lose because of that. It's like, yeah, sure, but it overall it's not that good, and you can definitely play around it. And I feel like Mimikyu is the same way, right? It's not that good, and if you play around it, you can beat it. So I feel like it just kind of makes people play honestly, and like, force them to play a little bit different, and can definitely consistently create situations where your opponent's like, just because they don't know how to play a deck against the card appropriately, they're just going to lose games even if they have like a good answer. So yeah, I think cards like this in the format constantly is a good thing. I know some people feel like it's a little bit like lazy card design and stuff, just kind of have a kind of answer all to like EXs and Vs or whatever, but I actually think it's good. It feels like it keeps the format honest to have like a card like this existing.
Yeah, I agree. It also like is kind of annoying though whenever they print cards like this and then they give like the best Pokemon in the format, like Duraludon VMAX and Mew VMAX, just attacks that hit through all effects, right? Because then it's like,
Yeah,
why are we even doing this?
Yeah, I don't think Duraludon's quite as big of a
not anymore.
What's it called?
No.
But yeah, Mew having just Max Miracle, I think was.
I just mean like with the card design,
yeah,
mechanic in general, like or just like how they've like introduced these things. It's like, yeah, we get Miltank, but like some of the strongest cards in the format that this would normally counter just have answers to it, right? And then like Giratina V comes out and it has Shred on it, right? So and then another thing about Mimikyu too is like if we get to a point where like stage 2 and stage 1 EXs are a lot more popular, all of those evolve from non-EX Pokemon, right? So theoretically every deck has a way to do at least something to a Mimikyu, right? If they're like a stage 2 EX deck.
Yeah, Mimikyu's only got the 70 HP, so it wouldn't even be that hard to KO. Yeah, moving on. I think we could talk about what's the next one to kind of talk about?
Annihilate BX. I don't think we've talked about just a new
if you
ultra
want
rare.
To, I'll let you handle it if you want to go.
Listen, man, we got to talk about all the ultra rares just real quick. I know it's not the best, but we just got to mention it.
Go ahead.
Stage 2 fighting type. For a fighting energy, Angry Grudge, 20 times, put up to 12 damage counters on this Pokemon. This attack does 20 damage for each damage counter you placed in this way. So for 1 energy, 240 is not too bad, but you do take yourself down to a low number. And then it has Seismic Toss, Fighting Colorless for 150. It is a stage 2, so probably not much happening with this guy.
Yeah, I don't think so. Another Pokemon, actually, this Pokemon I think has a little bit more viability. It comes off like a bulk EX, but the Copperajah with 300 HP. It's a stage 1, not a stage 2. So it's a lot of HP for a stage 1. And then it has the Bronze Body ability, which is it takes 30 less damage from attacks. So you're looking at effective 330 HP. That's pretty good. You're weak to fire, which is also a pretty good weakness right now. Or it has been for a little while, right? And then you have the Nose Quake attack from Metal Colors. I never read the name of the attack until right now. It does 260 and it's 30 damage to each of your bench Pokemon, and Manaphy doesn't protect from that, so that's a little bit you don't love to see that. But your other Copperajahs will kind of protect themselves, so it's not too big of a drawback, I don't think. Setting it up can be a little bit of a problem without Metal Saucer. We did lose Metal Saucer, right? So setting it up, you're looking at maybe a turn 3, which seems a little bit iffy. You could combo this with maybe something like a Squawkabilly or something to get there a little bit faster on your energy acceleration.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, you could even pair this with like a Lost Zone engine potentially, right? Get to Mirage Gate. It's
That's true, yeah.
a little bit more to commit to, right, as far as your draw engine goes. But yeah, I mean, I think this card is pretty strong, to be honest. Effective 330 hit points on a stage 1. I mean, that's a lot. That's pretty big, and it does a lot of damage. So I think this card definitely has pretty decent potential. It's just got good stats all around. It is a little clunky, I think. There's not like a clear-cut way for it right now, and maybe when it comes out, there won't be a clear-cut way for it still. But this is a card that maybe a year down the line, something else comes out that makes it a little better type of thing,
There's still Arceus, so you can play with Arceus as well. That wouldn't be
that
terrible.
is true. That is true. Well, no. Arceus only accelerates to V Pokemon Azul.
Oh, that is okay. Yeah, the whole VEX thing is happening in more ways than just taking advantage of Miltank. Moving along, I think we've talked about the Dunsparce. We talked about Squawkabilly. Did we talk about Super Rod? I think we did. We've talked about Super
We
Rod.
did, but we mentioned, because the translation Pokebeach had said, it just like copy pasted the original translation.
Yeah.
But Super Rod is now up to 3 in an in combination of base Pokemon and basic energy cards. So we talked about that just a little bit. Did want to clarify that now that it's been updated. It is up to. It is not a mandatory 3. So I'm kind of a fan of things that give players more choice, but I understand. I think you were kind of anti the up to thing.
I just don't think. I don't think everything needs to be up to, but they've kind of switched over to being consistently everything is up to, right? Sure. They've like eroded stuff recently, or not that, like pretty recently as far as eroded going Pokemon, right? Like in the last year or whatever. Eroded older versions of, I guess it's like a new version of what's coming up that's set up to, so it kind of makes sense. But yeah, it is up to. I just don't think everything needs to be up to, but I don't think it really matters probably too much one way or the other, to be honest. So it's fine. I also don't know how I feel about Super Rod getting reprint to begin with, to be honest, because I was kind of liking the idea of going into a format where the power of using your supporter for turn to recover Pokemon was interesting to me. Like how you have to kind of slow down to be like, okay, well, I got to play Clara this turn to recover Pokemon instead of playing, a researcher, a judge, or whatever, or a boss, right? So I kind of like the idea of that. I feel like it set up a better flow of the game of like knowing when you need to make those plays, or even having like a stronger impact on deck building potentially. So Super Rod being reprinted, everything can just be more aggressive, which isn't like a bad thing either, I don't think. But I kind of like the idea of maybe being in a format for a little while where our only Pokemon recovery was supporter based.
Yeah, and we will still have it for a little bit, but yeah, not for as long as we maybe would have thought. We've got Snow Mountain of Disaster. Whenever any player attaches an energy from their hand to one of their basic non-water Pokemon, put 2 damage counters on that Pokemon. We have the same stadium in the format right now with the old Cemetery, but for psychic energy. It's something that has been okay in psychic decks before, and I think this is something that could be okay in water decks, maybe if you want that extra damage, or maybe with something like the Wochian. But passive stadiums like this, just in the past history of the game, have never been that strong.
Yeah, never been great. I don't expect this one to really change anything.
Yeah.
But one card that probably will change things is the reversal energy coming out. While it's actual Pokemon, this card only provides 1 colorless energy. But if you have more prize cards remaining than your opponent, and it's attached to an evolved Pokemon that doesn't have a rule box, it provides 3 of any type of energy. So it's basically, for anyone who's been playing for a while, this is basically Scramble Energy reprinted, right?
Yep, pretty much the same, except that this Scramble Energy... Oh yeah, I think it is like literally...
Well,
no, Scramble Energy could also only be on evolutions, right?
Yeah, but it wasn't limited by... I guess rule boxes didn't exist back then.
Yeah. Well, no, EXs did. But I think, Scramble Energy could not be attached to EXs. So I'm pretty sure, I think it is like...
So it's literally the exact
I feel like I remember someone pointing out something that was like a little different with Scramble Energy, but now I'm not... Maybe I'm misremembering now, but...
Oh, could Scramble Energy be even attached to... Because this can be attached to non-evolution Pokemon.
Oh, yeah. Scramble Energy could not be attached to non-evolutions.
Okay, yeah. So I guess a little bit more of a consistent
This thing can be
overall.
attached to anything for a colorless, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good thing too, because already like non-EX stage 2s and stage 1s, like stage 1s even have it worse just because they're not as good. Like already have a pretty hard time of it, right? So if you can like attach a scramble energy to your basic before you research, that sounds like a pretty fine trade-off for having to play a scramble energy deck to begin with. And we'll see how good it is when it does come out. I think there's definitely some potential, if not well, immediately, like in the future for stage 2 non-EX decks to kind of start to see some play.
So that was Snow Hazard. We've got Clay Burst now to look at. And I think the first one here to mention is the Fortress EX, which
Mm-hmm.
combos with the Wochian we were mentioning. It is a Terra Pokemon, so it can't be damaged while it's on the bench. So, yeah, that's a really cool effect. And then Explosive Energy for the ability. Once during your turn, you may search your deck for up to 5 basic Grass Energy cards and attach them to your Pokemon in any way that you like. Then shuffle your deck. If you searched your deck in this way, this Pokemon is knocked out. So you do give up 2 prize cards to do this, but with cards like Iono coming into the format, with cards like the Scramble Energy, and with cards like the Wochian, I don't know, there's some potential for Fortress to see some play at some point.
Yeah, like turn 2 Iona with that actually doesn't even seem terrible, right? You put them to 4, they take a knockout, you put them to 2. Like you just kind of play a really aggressive game where you hope that, not that you'd like win if people got to efficiently use their cards, but you just hope you win because your opponent never got to see enough cards to actually play the game, right?
Yeah, and like this reminds a lot of people probably of Electrode EX if you've been playing for a very long time. Electrode EX from Fire Red Leaf Green. It had pretty much the same ability, except it attached from your discard pile, I believe. So this is almost even better, right? Being able to pull them from the deck. But it is limited to grass energy. Electrode could get any energy from your discard pile, which I guess is
Yeah.
the same as the Electrode GX as well, a little bit more recently. Electrode GX was never great. It got played every once in a while, but Electrode EX was a really, really strong card in a lot of strategies,
And we
mainly
just had
involving Tyranitar.
yeah, most recently we just had the Electrode itself, right? Search your deck for 2 lightning. That's something they
Yeah,
changed up
yeah.
with
But that one
these.
wasn't very good at all.
Yeah, that's something they changed up with these like sacrifice Pokemon where you give your opponent that knocks itself out, you give your opponent prize cards, is that it searches the deck instead of like discard top 5, top 7, whatever, right? Well, because with Electrode EX discarded top X, right?
No,
Or am
no,
I
no. That's
I
Electrode
looked at?
Prime. That's Electrode Prime.
Oh, okay. Electrode
Electrode
EX.
EX pulled them from your discard pile. So it was whatever energy you had discarded
Oh,
throughout
that
the course
was
of the game.
different. Okay.
So that's
Okay,
why
they've
it
done
was
it like
really
different.
good. That's why it
Yeah,
was
they've done it different
good.
quite a few times then. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, yeah. So next one is that Belly Bolt, which is a lot of people's like. I think a lot of people like this Pokemon in general. It's a funny looking one for sure. It's
He's a
got an
goofy
EX
little
card
guy.
now. Yeah, it's got an EX card now. 280 HP, so pretty good amount of HP. It is a stage 1, so that's pretty good for a stage 1. I feel like. Jump Press for 2 colors for CDM showing your opponent's Pokemon. Meh, who cares? Then Lightning colors 160. Discard 2 Lightning from this Pokemon. If you do, your opponent's active is now paralyzed. So actually, I think that's pretty decent, right? 280 HP. You're 2-hit KOing like everything with Paralyzed Bowl, and then you're kind of locking it down for a turn, potentially, and forcing your opponent to kind of get an answer to that. So playing this alongside Flaffy seems like it could. There actually could be something there, especially if we're going into like a more heavy. Like if we get into a meta where it's less one prize Pokemon, I think something like Belly Ball could actually stand up. So because like I don't think you're getting 1-hit KO'd back that often with 280.
Yeah. We've also got cards like Electric Generator in the format to accelerate to the bench to Lightning Pokemon, right? So yeah, Belly Bolt seems okay. This is what I've always said about paralysis. It's the best status condition in the game. So anytime something can automatically paralyze your opponent's active Pokemon, it's worth just kind of at least keeping in mind for the future, right?
Yeah, keep a note of it for sure. The next one I think is worth talking about, at least briefly here, is the Wigglytuff. Stage 1. It's got the balloon therapy ability. Once during your turn, you may attach a therapy energy from your hand to one of your Pokemon. And their therapy energy is a new special energy coming out that provides 1 colorless energy. We'll read the rest of it later. But I think that could be interesting in some decks that just kind of lack energy acceleration. And then all of a sudden, that's just like that little bit that decks maybe need to become viable or competitive. So I
Yeah.
think it's definitely something like worth kind of trying out for sure when it comes out, and remembering as new sets release as well. It's like, oh, I'm always just like a couple energy short from like being able to keep up with this deck that I have. Oh wait, I could just play like a Wigglytuff line with some therapy energy.
Yeah, it's something to maybe think about, but it is, I mean, that does involve adding a stage 1 to your deck, and then now it's something else you have to try to set up on turn 1. So it's maybe a little too clunky. It kind of reminds me right now of like React Energy. It was this energy card that like didn't
Yeah.
do anything except be a React Energy, and then there was like a couple things that worked with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Therapy Energy is maybe a little bit better than that, but Yeah, we'll talk about it
Yeah.
later. We can move on to the Tinkaton EX.
Well, hold on. I'm
Oh,
forgetting Spiritomb here. I think we
do
should
we not
mention
talk about
Spiritomb.
Spiritomb in the past?
I don't think so.
Okay.
We'll mention it real fast here, though. 60 HP, basic Pokemon, Pitch Black Doom. As long as this Pokemon is in play, basic V Pokemon have no abilities, both yours and your opponent. So it feels like they're trying to pretty aggressively push V Pokemon out with stuff like Spiritomb and just be like, Mew's kind of cool, but it's been too cool for too long. Here's Spiritomb to make sure it stops being cool, right?
Yeah.
Stuff like that. So definitely, really good against V Pokemon. And I don't mind this, to be honest. I don't mind cards like coming out like this to be like, instead of having to wait for a rotation for EXs to really kick in, if they just give us a couple cards like this to really deal with some of the heavy hitting V Pokemon, and we get to play EXs sooner, I actually don't mind stuff like Spiritomb being printed, to be honest.
Yeah. Spiritomb seems okay. I think that Mew, they've already printed enough stuff to try to hate on Mew that at this point it feels a little like it's overkill. But
yeah, I already feel like Mew's in a bad spot, but yeah. Go ahead and Tinkaton.
Yeah, Tinkaton, here we come. Stage 2, Psychic type Pokemon, 300 hit points with the Humongous Hammer, 30 damage. It does 30 damage times the number of cards in your hand. And then Pulverizing Press, 140 for a Psychic and 2 colorless, not affected by any effect on your opponent's active Pokemon. This one doesn't seem great, especially, Humongous Hammer, like these type of large hand size attack damage output attacks have like existed before. 30 times is like a lot, right? That can ramp up pretty quick, but with cards like Iono coming out in the format, it's going to be kind of tough to keep a large hand size to do a lot of damage with this.
Yeah, definitely not going to be a great one. Could be a good meme though. But we'll move on to something that has a little bit more potential, I think, a little bit of fringe potential, which is the Noivern EX. 260 HP, stage 1, of course. Colorless, 70 damage during points, turn, prevent all damage to this Pokemon by attacks from basic Pokemon. Okay, interesting attack with that one. Not going to be super viable, I think, when EX is stage 1, stage 2 seems so good, but you never know.
In the right meta, right? To counter a specific thing, it is 2 colorless as well.
Yeah, so you could play it as like a 1-1 line and just beat every basic attacking. When Reggie's makes a comeback eventually, whatever. We got the Noivern. And then Dominant Echo for Psychic Dark. 140 during your opponent's turn. They can't play any special energy or stadium cards from their hand. So this is Chaos Wheel reincarnate after Chaos Wheel was already reincarnated on a Noivern V, I want to say. No, GX. So Chaos Wheel's back. But I think there's too much energy acceleration in the format currently. But if things slow down eventually, and special energy, when you get more special energy for special energy, that kind of make a little bit more of a comeback. I don't think it'll be good enough on its own. Like Noivern would need a partner. So going back to Tina Toad, we need Noivern something to actually make it potentially viable. But I feel like
Noivern Burnett, baby, let's get it. Come on now.
That's true. There definitely is some fringe potential, though. I think for sure.
Yeah, this one seems it's fine. I don't think there's anything amazing here, but who knows? With cards that come out in the future, maybe there's something a little stronger. Another card to mention is the Flamigo. Is this the one? Yeah. With the Flock Together ability, you get to search deck for 3 Flamigo and put them in your hand when you bench it, and then it has the Wings of Union attack for 2 colorless, 20 damage. This attack does 20 damage times the number of Pokemon in your discard pile that have the Wings of Union attack. And there are 4, is that right? Right now?
Yeah. It is unfortunately just 3.
Okay. It's Flamigo, Murkrow, and then I think there's a not a Kilowattrel. What's just Wattrel. Wattrel is the little guy.
Yeah, I think it's just 3, unfortunately, right now. So you're not doing very much damage. This is, anyone who's played for a little bit, this is, Lost March, this is Night March, this is Mad Party, right? But it doesn't seem as good when there's only 3 things with Wings of Union, but we might get some more. I think it is possible, right? But that ability, any of those decks would kill for an ability like Flock Together.
Yeah.
That ability's insane.
Yeah, it just gets all your guys out of the deck so that you can just research them away or Ultra Ball them away. Like super good. And the fact that it's on maybe one of the ones you want to attack with. It does also, worth noting, have 110 HP, which is a bit more than what we would be used to with this type of deck, right? These are usually like the Glass Cannon, right? With the Joltik being 30 hit points, the Bunnelby being 40 hit points, the Sinistea being 60 hit points. This is the most HP we've seen on one. Granted, 110 isn't really surviving too much, but, worth noting.
Yeah, they're not going to be able to get like a cheeky turn 2 knockout in some situations for sure. So, but yeah, they'll need a couple more Pokemon with Wings of Union, I think, to make it work. Moving on to the trainer section, we've talked about Ono before. We mentioned
Bro,
Charmacourge, I
we're
believe,
not
as
calling it
well.
Ono. It is Iono. It is Iono. Moving on.
Moving on. So what is new here that we haven't talked about before? I think it might just be the therapy energy, right? I think we
Yeah,
talked about
that
Wilderness
wilderness
of
of
Disaster.
disaster, but yeah, it's
Yeah, so therapy energy mentioned before, combos with the Wigglytuff. And then it removes Asleep, Confusion, and Paralyze from the Pokemon it's attached to. So I think we'll definitely see this included as at least probably a one of in Lugia decks. And besides that, obviously any Wigglytuff deck that is trying to use the Wigglytuff for energy acceleration. But I think it'll probably stop there for the most part. Pretty weak special energy overall. We never see these special condition control and special energies to ever be that good.
yeah, it could be a situation of like played as a one or two of in a deck if there's like a paralysis deck that's really good, right? Like
Yeah. Belly
you
Ball.
mentioned Lugia specifically, but anything that could make use of it. To be honest, like this reminds me a lot of Heal Energy, which was very similar back in the EX era. So I mean, we're seeing a lot of themes coming back from the original EX era, which is kind of cool.
That's true,
And I
yeah.
guess makes sense, right? Since it's the new EX era.
Yeah, definitely does. Sorry, I don't know if I don't think I muted the right audio
You did
source on that
not.
one. Yeah,
Well, I don't know.
I
You might have muted for them, but you did not mute for me.
don't think I muted for anyone.
We all
But
just
yeah,
got bodied by Azul's nose right there.
we can move on and talk about that. Yeah, that covers all the new cards that we haven't talked about quite yet on the cast, and we got EUIC coming up, of course. But we've already had some tournaments in this format, so we're gonna take a look at some of those first. Starting with, I don't remember the name of this one. Chip, what is this first one we're gonna take a look at?
This was the Suryabi, Baya, I think is how you say it.
Okay.
Regionals. It took place in Indonesia Regional
Mhm.
League. And shout outs to Deddy Wong, who actually tagged us on Twitter in some results from this event.
Yes, I
Sent
don't think we
us.
know the exact placements of everything, but the finals was Lugia Single Strike V Star Mirror.
That's right.
And then the rest of the top 8 was 2 Guardi EX, 2 Arctina, 1 Fusion Mew, and then 1 Lost Box with Kyogre. So Lugia, I mean, this is what we can. I think like this is what has kind of been a trend recently. Is this Lugia's just been doing better and better.
Yeah, it almost feels like we're in a position where we're moving from one format where Lugia was BDIF into another format where Lugia could be BDIF. It's definitely one of the strongest decks, and seems like it has. I don't know. It almost feels like it needs less to get going than it needed before. It's like you play less cards. It's like you need more, but you almost have to play less cards to do it. I don't know. I've just had many games where I've played this Lugia single strike deck where literally it's just like I bench Lugia and then pass, and then the next turn I just go Luminion for Burnett, discard the 2 guys, and then Messagoza for my V Star, and then without even really doing much, I feel like I'm attacking and ready to go. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was that way before, but you just have less options now. So it's not like you're overthinking. Ooh, do I have Raikou here? Do I save my Yveltal? You're just like, well, I can attack with Lugia. All right, I'll attack with Lugia, right? Like, I feel like you just have less options. So that's kind of the that's kind of the reason to go with that. But yeah, I think 2 things to just kind of take note of here is Lugia, both in the finals, and then Arctina as well has been a deck that's been kind of trending upwards as of late. 2 of those in top 8 as well. Guardi's being up there is no surprise. And then I guess a little bit overall lack of Lost Box in top 8. There's still one with the Kyogre, which is not kind of, I don't think that's really the go-to right now, is the Kyogre. So, yeah, those are like my takeaways from this, from these top 8, these top 8 placements. Also, the mat is super sick. I should mention that as well.
That is really cool. Yeah, a unique artwork as well. I don't think that this artwork exists anywhere besides this. I actually could be wrong about that now that I'm kind of looking at it again, but
I mean, it's cool.
it is very cool.
It'd be cool.
Very cool.
Yeah.
It is definitely it's definitely at least like not just the pack artwork blown up onto a playmat, right? Which, to be fair, a lot of those, like, I do think like I do like the way a lot of the regional mats look. But it's kind of just like the artwork that we're used to seeing, right? It'd be cool if it was something unique.
Yeah. The other result for us to take a look at is the Champions League Miyagi that happened over in Japan. So Miraidon did take down the whole thing, and we can talk about that in a second. And then besides that, we had 7 Lugias in the top 16, and I think they played to a top 16 cut, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so, yeah.
Arctina had a placement as
2,500
well.
players at this as well, by the way.
Yeah,
2,500 players.
definitely worth mentioning. Yeah, 2,500 players, and then in this one there was 3 Lost Box in top 8, but none of them made it past the top 8. But looking at Miraidon hasn't been doing very much at all. Oh, there was also a Miraidon Flaffy in top 16 as well. So there was 2 Miraidons, but the Miraidon Regieleki was the overall winner of the tournament. And Miraidon hasn't really been doing anything in this format, I feel like, at these major tournaments. And this build was pretty unique, I feel like, in the fact that it had a 2-1 Magnezone V-Star in it.
Yeah, the Magnezone V-Star definitely unique. I mean, this deck doesn't, besides using Forest Sealstone, have a V-Star power. Magnezone is a card that I think does make some sense in here. Its first attack, Magnetic Grip, is not too bad. 180 and search your deck for up to 2 item cards, put them into your hand. But it's Electro Star V-Star power. If your opponent does not get Manaphy down quickly, I mean, this is really good against Gardevoir. It's really good against Lost Box, right? The problem is that it can just be kind of answered by the Manaphy, right? But it's almost like, I guess you could, if you deal with the Manaphy.
Well, hold on. I feel like you don't know what the V does. The V's first attack switches one of your opponent's best Pokemon with their active, and then does 40 damage to the new active Pokemon.
Oh,
so Magnezone V just KOs Manaphy.
Sure.
And that's why I think they play a 2-1, right? So they can go consistently find Magnezone V early, and even maybe go back to back. Like Magnezone V, they get that KO. Maybe your Magnezone V gets return KO'd, you KO that Pokemon, but now you have that second Magnezone V to become the V-Star to then clean up 2 prize cards and get ahead in the prize trade later. So yeah, the Magnezone V into V-Star combo. It's pretty cool. It's definitely interesting. And it definitely seems like they probably had to go through a couple Lost Boxes. There was 3 Lost Boxes in top 8. So there's a good chance that they played against one of them. I'm not sure what they played against in top 8, but it's a pretty popular deck in general. So they probably beat a couple throughout the tournament. I'm sure Magnezone was a pretty big reason for that. Yeah, so definitely an interesting inclusion. I've been seeing a lot on the ladder as well recently on PTCG Live.
The Magnezone version. Yeah, it's definitely cool. Definitely. And this is what I'm talking about, right? Or what you were talking about, I guess, is like just people innovating and even just like adding a Magnezone V-Star to this deck, like maybe makes it all that much better, right?
Yeah, I guess one thing we should have also mentioned though is this format is not quite the same as ours. They do have triple beat, so they have Jet Energy, they have Luminous Energy. They also have the Stadium that searches for a basic Pokemon from your deck. I think it's mostly the only cards that I really played, but it did bring around a different kind of build of Lugia that didn't get second place. And I think the overall most dominant build of Lugia in this top 16 was still Single Strike Lugia. It might be like 5-2, but the other 2 are a kind of colorless build of Lugia. Some of them included the Luminous Energy plus Radiant Charizard again, and some of them just were just like full-on colorless Lugia for Jet Energy, and they started including the Weird Tier V that can pretty much just one KO anything after you accelerate enough energy to play with the Archeops.
Yeah, Weird Ear gets in there. It also has the Snorlax, right, where it's just a really strong hitter, and then if it goes to sleep and stays asleep, you just boom, Jet Energy, something's the active, manually retreat back into Snorlax, you can attack again. So yeah, a lot of cool things going on with the colorless version of Lugia. I do, yeah, like you said, think Single Strike is probably a little bit better. And did you watch the finals of this tournament, Azul, or have you watched anything from it? Yeah, so the Regieleki guy got, or the Miraidon guy got turn 1 Raikou rope KO only Lugia to just like pretty much win the game from there. So it was a pretty quick finals.
Was it just best of 1, or is that just
it's best of 1? It's best of 1.
Oh, really? I didn't know it was best of 1. What the man? Yeah, the best of 1 stuff. I'm not a huge fan of that. I think it's something that Japan should change. I did talk to someone who actually, who is is very much knows about their scene and stuff, and they said one of the reasons is that they just want tournaments to get done in time for people to take. Like one of the things is just to be able to make them be able to take public transit back home. So they don't want tournaments running too long, I think, is one of their reasons for doing best of 1 over best 2 out of 3.
Sure.
But I think it would be cool to see them make it work somehow to get best 2 out of 3 involved in their scene. Because I think it would definitely add another level of it makes it more competitive, adds a level of consistency for the top players and so on.
And then we've got a few different Lost Box lists here in top 8. Looks like this one's just kind of, I haven't looked at any of these too in depth yet as well. I don't know if you have yet, but we got the Zamazenta build, we got the Dragonite build, Sky Seal, Forest Seal, all that stuff. Kind of just different options. This one list does have the Artisan, that new stadium that lets you search for the basic. The Jet Energy is pretty good for Lost Box as well, it feels like.
Yeah, nothing too crazy. Jet Energy is interesting because it takes away your energy return. So if you're still playing a Mirage Gate build, you can't attach Jet and then use a single Mirage Gate to attack with a Snorlax or a Greninja or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
One of the builds had quad quad cross switchers in it, which was interesting, but they were cutting it down to like 2 escape rope, which I really don't like the idea of. It also had canceling clones. So it was an interesting build for sure. But yeah, I don't have too much else to say, I think, on any of these lists, really. Of course, they are playing like a little bit of different formats than us, but not too different. So I think it's still a pretty good indication of what is good overall in our format still as well. Like we see Lugia doing well. The Miraidon did squeak in, get that dub in first place. And if the Magnetone truly is enough to give you a 50-50 or better against Lost Box, maybe that is just the way to go with Miraidon from here. Because I do feel like Miraidon's other matchups, like the Mew matchup, the Guardian matchup, like all those matchups still like they do kind of feel fine. The Lugia matchup hasn't felt great. Single strike Lugia at the very least. But you said, yeah, when you get the turn one escape rope knockout, you're going to be feeling pretty good. But
yeah,
I don't really have anything else to mention on any of these unless you saw something else you wanted to bring up.
Yeah, I mean, we've got the one Guardian here, one Mew. Are you talking about the Lost Box or just this top 16 in general?
Oh, top 16 in general. Yeah, I'm kind of like that. There's not too much that stands out to me.
Yeah. Yeah, we can go ahead and move on, and we'll talk more about some specifics as we chat about our meta predictions for EUIC. But for now, we can take a moment and do everyone's favorite segment of the podcast, Guess That Flavor Text. Of course, the game Azul and I play every single week, where one of us picks a card, reads the flavor text from it, and has the other host try to guess what Pokemon card we are reading. If you get it right, you get 4 points, but you can use some lifelines. You lose points every lifeline you use, but it makes it a little bit easier for you. What set is the card from? What stage is the card? And read an attack name. That's the 3 different lifelines you can use. It is my turn to pick this week. I believe I am currently 1 point behind Azul after coming through in the clutch last week, just like I always do. And we'll see if Azul can get this one or not.
Did you get the one last week?
I think so.
What was that? I don't think you did. I
The
got the one like before.
Lillipup?
Oh no, I think we are tied because you got Wooper, right?
Oh, Wooper was last week. That's right. Oh, yeah. We are tied.
Are we tied now?
Yeah.
I feel like we are tied now because you got Wooper.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it took me 2 weeks. I got 1 point each to just tie you, and you've just gotten a couple of goose eggs a few weeks in a row. So this is what we're kind of used to at this point.
Well, let's see if I can pull ahead once again here. What do you got for me this week, Chip?
All right, here we go. Such a thick shell of wood covers its head and back that even a direct hit from a trunk wouldn't phase it.
All right, go ahead and go one more time.
Such a thick shell of wood covers its head and back that even a direct hit from a truck wouldn't phase it.
Such a thick shell of wood covers its head and its back. I mean, I'm thinking of, for some reason, I was like thinking of like tree Pokemon. But I don't know if it's a tree Pokemon.
I did say trunk. I meant truck. A direct hit
truck,
from a truck.
Yeah, I got that one. The second one.
Yeah.
So it's got a thick shell of wood around it. I'm thinking Sudowoodo, but for some reason I know Sudowoodo is not a tree. Like I've been through this before. Where it's like, yo, Sudowoodo's a tree, and then like, no, it's not. It's like, oh, it's actually not. So I don't think it's Sudowoodo.
Azul never played the Pokemon video games, for anyone who's curious.
Yeah,
because that is a whole plot. That is a whole plot line in the second generation of
Everyone's
games.
like, of course Sudowoodo is not a tree. So okay, so I don't think it's Sudowoodo. I'm trying to think of Pokemon that just have wood on them, around them, and he said like a shell, which is like interesting. I can't quite come up. Oh, now that you say that, though, I am thinking about Wuchien because Wuchien looks like, but we only have the EX of Wuchien, so it can't be Wuchien.
Yeah, and it's also not out in English. I think we with this game.
Are we limiting ourselves to?
Yeah. It should just be
these,
cards that have come out in English. Yeah.
Trying to think about some other Pokemon in the current or that have come out recently, Scarlet and Violet. I can't think of anything. So I think we're going to go with what set the card is from. This usually gives me like a pretty good, it does help me a little bit to kind of get like a good, like I can like pick from like a time frame. I can't like lock in like you do sometimes off of what set the card is from, but it does let me pick like, I know generally.
It helps you more than you initially thought it helped you.
Yeah, definitely. So let's go with what's set the card is from.
It is from XY Breakthrough.
XY Breakthrough. Oh my gosh.
That was a really good competitive set, by the way.
Yeah, I remember. What was it? I don't know. Did that work out Greninja? Greninja came from Breakthrough, right?
Greninja was in Breakpoint. Breakthrough had like Zoroark and Zoroark Break. And then
like the break. Oh yeah, that's right. Breaks. Yeah.
but the Mewtwo EX and Mega Mewtwo EXs were in there as well.
Was that? Did Trevenant come out? Trevenant's a tree. Did Trevenant? I don't know if Trevenant came on that set. Let's go with what stage the card is.
It is a basic.
Okay, so it's not Trevenant. Although Phantom, is Phantom like a little ghost, or is it also a tree? No, I think Phantom is a ghost that haunts a tree when it becomes Trevenant. I'm pretty sure. Man, I'm like completely tapped out on this one. A thick trunk. You're gonna say it too, and I'll probably be like, oh, okay, that's like makes sense. Like, not that I couldn't believe that I couldn't think about it, but oh man,
This one's a little hard, I'll say.
this one does seem tough. Thick. All right, go ahead. Read it one more time.
Such a thick shell of wood covers its head and back that even a direct hit from a truck wouldn't phase it.
Man, all right. Let's do read an attack name and see if this helps.
I'll give you the easier attack name because you're struggling.
You don't have to. You don't have to. Maybe that.
I will. Seed
Okay.
Bomb.
Ooh, see, I know I've read Seed Bomb before. That could be Phantom. No, because it's not Trevenant because it's a basic. It's Phantom. I feel like Phantom's just like a little ghost though. I don't think he's in like a stump or like any part of a tree. Maybe I should guess Phantom though. I think that's all like Seed Bomb. Definitely read some Seed Bomb attacks in my day. What other grass Pokemon are there? I'm just thinking of random ones. Cricketoots, grass. Doesn't got any wood shell.
Cricketoo's a bug, bro.
Yeah, but what are the wood shell?
All
Yeah,
right.
I'm just going Phantom. I'm just gonna lock in Phantom on this one.
It is unfortunately not Phantom. Phantom is in Break Point, not Breakthrough. And it also is like a ghost that inhabits like a tree stump. No.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Pokemon is Chespin.
Oh my gosh.
Chespin, Azul. Come on, man.
I would have never guessed that Chespin. Hey, I'm gonna look up a picture of Chespin now.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess like
what bark? The green stuff? It has to be, right?
I guess.
That's bark. Yeah. I was never guessing Chespin. That one was never happening.
Yeah, I gave you the Seed Bomb for the attack name instead of Work, which was the other attack name. Just Work.
Yeah, I don't think I would ever got that. All right, well,
better luck next week, Azul. Better luck next week. And next week, by the way, actually, I guess not better luck to you, better luck to me because it's my opportunity to pull back ahead. Let's get it, baby.
It's been a while, but yeah, you have an opportunity here. But yeah, lackluster week for me on the Guess That Flavor Text, but it's all right. We'll move on. Big tournament this weekend, huge tournament. I guess one thing we could talk about is a little bit about the tournament in general. It's in London again. I still have yet, so someone in the comment section has got to help me out here. I'm in London. I still have yet to eat at a single place in London where I've been like, oh, I would go to this place again. No, there is actually one place. There's like this like food truck kind of type restaurant. It's like a restaurant in a truck. That's close to the venue actually. The pizza there is pretty good.
Are you staying near the Excel Center?
Yeah.
You gotta go.
But
like,
I ventured out.
London,
I ventured out.
Okay.
Yeah, I ventured out multiple times. I remember like when I was coming here for Worlds, I was like, I was like, people I feel like always the meme is that British food is just terrible. And I saw that meme, coming up again as Worlds was coming around, and I was like, I don't remember it being like that bad the last 2 times I was here. But then I got here for Worlds, and everywhere I went, it was just like mid. Everything besides that pizza place. The pizza place is pretty good, but like I've already been to a couple places, different new places since I've been here this time. Still haven't found another place besides that pizza place where I'd go back to. The only other thing that I've like enjoyed has been like the fish and chip shops are pretty good, but like you can only get fish and chips there, so you're kind of limited. But in the comment section here on YouTube, I know we got some European listeners. There's probably people who are not European who've been to London before. What are some of your favorite places to get food? Because yeah, I think there's some truth to every meme, right? So the meme that British food sucks, there's some truth to it. It's a little bit harder. There's some good stuff out there, I'm sure. It's a little bit harder to find, than some other major cities I've been to. But I know it exists, but I haven't found it yet. So
have you ever heard the
Isaiah Williams has been telling me that I'm wrong, and there's a bunch of good places that he's been to. So I'm going to follow him around for food this week. But yeah, if anyone knows any good places, let me know in the comment section here on YouTube for sure, because I like London overall. Like I'm a big fan of like old architecture and stuff. So I always love coming here, but I haven't been able to have the most enjoyable experience with food yet. But yeah, back at the Excel Center once again. I probably won't be at London next year, though. I would imagine. I think they'll switch it up finally, right?
Yeah, who knows? Honestly, I was kind of surprised that it was going back to London after
Well, actually,
Worlds
I
was
take that
just
back.
there, right?
Yeah. Well, I missed the last EUIC, but that was in
Frankfurt.
Frankfurt. Okay, so they did Germany twice and then brought it back to London. But yeah, I think they'll switch it up probably next year. So it's actually not that big of a deal that they brought it to London.
Yeah, we'll
I
see.
think they did just have Worlds here, though. So it does that. I guess that does feel a little bit. I'm sure a little repetitive for sure. I guess, especially for the people who are like traveling.
Yeah.
Making the for like NAIC, we go to the Midwest every single year. So I don't really like. I just kind of know that's happening. I'm sure for the European players, they're kind of like for the ones that actually make it out of Europe to the other ICs. They like to see it switched up. But if it's in London every time, they're probably a little bit fine with that as well. Like if they put it somewhere else in the US, I wouldn't really care. So if it's in the Midwest every time, I'm kind of fine with that, I guess. But
yeah,
I didn't have anything else with that. Go ahead.
Yeah,
I want to talk about how
help
many
Azul
players
find something to eat.
we've got.
Azul find something to eat.
Yeah, we got 1,800. Let me look it up right now while I'm talking. I think we got 1,800 TCG players at this, which is huge. This will be the biggest IC ever outside of NAIC. And this will be bigger than last NAIC, probably. I've got 1,900, 1,895 TCG players.
Is it not going to be probably bigger than any NAIC?
Could it be? What's the biggest NAIC ever?
I think the biggest one is like 15 something.
That's close. It'll be close then, right? Because it's 19. If it was 15, that's 400 difference. But then we got no shows, juniors, seniors. They'll be close. This could be the biggest IC ever, actually. And I actually expect this IC. Actually, I was going to talk about it as well. We could have put this in the prediction, but I actually think America might be the second most represented country at EUIC this year. There are so many American players going, and North American players even going to EUIC. It's actually kind of crazy. And I actually think that's part of that is because people are trying to get their invites. So people are trying to make that trip over. IC's it feels a lot more reasonable to get points at ICs than regional sometimes. But I think also a lot of people are just because of that, people are going out of their way to look up how much is it to go to EUIC. And it's really, especially if you're on the East Coast, I remember it's probably a little bit more expensive nowadays, but the first EUIC I went to, I think my flight was like $350.
So yeah, really it's definitely more than that, but
I mean, my flight was $600 from the West Coast this time. So
really? Oh geez.
Yeah. So I don't think it's just really not that expensive to get to London, as I think as far as people know. The only real, I think the big strain for some people would just be the time commitment, right? Sure. You have to take Thursday off as well as potentially Friday if you're working. But you can fly back Sunday pretty reasonably most of the time because it's only finals on Sunday. So then you can get back to work on Monday, whereas in some regionals, something you might not have been able to. So I just think it's UIC is a lot more reasonable than a lot of people have known about previously, but people went out of their way this year to try and see if they could get to UIC, and they're like, oh, all right, it's actually not that hard to get there. A lot of direct flights, not as expensive as some of the other ICs for sure, and pretty reasonable, I think, overall. So I think UIC will be the second biggest tournament of the year behind NAIC every year from here on out, or that's what I'd predict.
Yeah, well, I think this tournament as well, part of it was we didn't know that League Cups and Challenges were coming back.
Part of it's that.
People are trying to get their invites still, and the ICs give so many points, right? But yeah, I mean, I think people were also excited to play the new set. There's so many factors. It's almost maybe a situation of a perfect storm of factors that just lead to this one being as big. And maybe it will continue to be large in the future, but it's probably more specifically if it's in London, right? If we move to some other country,
that might be part of it as well.
It might be, London just specifically maybe is what is the cheap part to fly to, right? Because it is such a massive city.
That's true. Maybe that's why they brought it back on. Maybe that's why they'll keep it in London from here on out. They're just well, it's just going to become the new Indiana/Columbus for EUIC from here on out. We just have to deal with it.
Yeah, I
which I don't think
London is quite a bit cooler than Columbus or Indianapolis. So.
Yeah, as far as it's convenient for European players. Which, if you're a European player, how convenient is it in general to get to London, right? But if it is that convenient for European players and that convenient for the rest of the world to get to, maybe London is just a spot to keep it, right? Maybe that should be the take priority over a cool new city. Maybe the priority should just be convenience for the general player base, which it seems like London might be the city.
All right, Azul, let's talk about the meta. Let's talk about this tournament. We've got the new set legal, Scarlet Violet. We've got the EX cards, all of these things. We've got a few tournaments to go off of. We've talked about all the events so far that have happened IRL over in Japan and other parts of Asia with the Scarlet and Violet cards legal, but there's also been a ton of online events from the past week and a half or so of people playing on TCG Live, playing in these online events. So based on all of that, all of everything that we've seen and kind of how we've seen the meta already take form and start to shift a little bit, what would you call in this format the BDIF? What is the best deck, or is it maybe too early to identify one deck as the best?
I mean, I think you could always give something the label, like giving something the label of BDIF, even in the moment. And it's kind of like, if you say it's a BDIF, I think it's difference between like BDIF for a format and BDIF for meta, right? Like last format, the BDIF was Lugia, and it was possible we could have actually got to a point where Lugia wasn't the most played deck. It never happened. But even if something else was the most played deck in a tournament, you would still call Lugia the BDIF, right? No one would ever contest that. So you can always call something like just kind of the current BDIF, what seems to be the BDIF, depending on how the meta currently is shaped, right? Because like Lost Box is super popular right now, and it makes some other kind of build of deck BDIF because it has a really good Lost Box matchup. As soon as Lost Box dies off, then all of a sudden a new deck could rise up, and then all of a sudden that deck probably isn't BDIF anymore because it can't beat up on Lost Box as consistently as it was before, right? So I think the current deck I would label BDIF is probably Lugia. Like I played with a decent amount of the new decks. Lugia seems super powerful, even post rotation. Lost a lot of its options, but it kept a lot of its power in terms of just the kind of stuff it can just like kind of set up an attack with through the acceleration of Archeops turn to turn. Still pretty ridiculous. And we've seen it in the results as well. Like Lugia keeps doing better and better and winning more and more, right? So
Yeah,
I would currently give it to Lugia. Yeah,
looking at the online event results as well, Lugia is currently the third most played deck online, but of the top 10 or so decks, top 10 decks, and really, I mean, we probably have to scroll pretty far down to find something with a higher win rate. Lugia does have the highest win rate of all the top decks right now.
yeah.
Which, I mean, I don't think that these numbers, these are the limitless like online tournament results. I don't think these are necessarily like the perfect thing to go by, right? This is
Yeah,
how
of
you
course.
should be predicting the meta for the next IRL tournament, but it is worth taking note of, I think, for sure. And like there is good information to glean from this.
Yeah, and I think you need some big tournaments like EUIC or even some regionals to really have some big shakeups potentially into like showing people that certain decks are good or can compete, and as opposed to like people kind of sitting there and be like, is it really that good? I think we saw with Goodra last format was a pretty good a look at that happening in a meta. So I think we need some good players to step up, or some people some good builds to step up and like kind of prove that these decks can compete, and that'll kind of sway the meta as well. Like no one's playing, let's say, I don't know, like Shadow Riders, like one of those fringe decks that's been popping up a little bit. No one's really playing Shadow Rider right now, but if there's 4 of them in top 8 at UIC, I think we're going to look at it a little bit differently, right? And I think Japan's results are a little bit weird, a little bit skewed. It feels like they're a little bit disconnected from everyone else, and even I do this as well, and I think it's fair to. I don't put as much weight in Japan's results because it is best of one. I just think that does impact the results like quite a bit. I don't put as much weight into Japan's results. I mean, there's a lot to take from them, of course, but I always feel like I'm gonna lean a little bit more on a top 8 from EUIC than I would a Japan tournament, even if it was like on the same day. It doesn't really matter how big it is. Even if they have the 3,000 players, EUIC versus a 3K Japan tournament, I'm going to care a little bit more about the results from EUIC just because I feel like it is a little bit more competitive with that best 2 out of 3 factor.
Yeah, I think that's fair for sure. And yeah, so you were talking about kind of like the Shadow Rider thing of it's not a super played deck right now, but like, maybe a good group finds a really good list and plays it, and then a bunch make top 8. We almost saw that happen with EUIC last year with Urshifu, right? Like Urshifu, it was a known deck, right? Robin Scholes had won a regionals with it, but it wasn't like super high on the radar. Like people knew it existed, knew it was decent, but everyone kind of properly identified like, okay, this deck is the best play for this tournament. We've got the fighting type for the Arceus. We've got the darkness types for the Mew. Let's just run it. And it ended up being 5 out of the top 8 spots.
Yeah. And the deck, like after that, it wasn't just kind of like, okay, like a Shadow Rider deck, I could see like winning, or like you could have 4 of them in top 8. And then after that, it's like, okay, you can't really play it anymore. People put their tech cards in for it, and you just that kind of crumbles, right? But Urshifu like maintained, right? It's like, oh, it's just a really good deck, and it's still a really good deck because you can't really tech for it, right?
I think it definitely fell off a bit after that tournament.
Well, yeah, it wasn't as good because it was. I think one of the big power strengths of the Urshifu deck was definitely.
Oh yeah, Arceus deck started
the,
playing the Hoopa, right? That started
Yeah,
becoming
people kind of had
pretty
no
big
idea how to
thing,
play against it, but I think it was still a tier 1 deck. Like I don't think Urshifu was outside of tier 1 after that. Maybe it was like tier S at EUIC and then tier 1 after that, right?
Sure.
So that's how you can look at like a meta, like for a specific meta with what people are currently on average teching for, or on average how they're building their decks. At the EUIC last year, Urshifu was a tier S deck, and identifying that before the tournament put you in a pretty good spot with there's like 5 of them in top 8 or whatever, 4 or 5. And then after that, people learn the matchup. People put a couple more techs in for the matchup. It probably falls to like, a tier 1 deck from there, right? But yeah, I think Lugia, we give Lugia. I think I give Lugia. Do you have an opinion on that right now? What do you give like the current reigning BDIF, like this moment in the meta?
Yeah, I mean, I do agree. Lugia seems really strong. I think most people have been leaning into Lost Box as being the BDIF, and Lost Box really. I mean, it lost Scoop Up Net, but other than that, it didn't lose too much. Scoop Up Net is a pretty big deal to lose, though.
It's pretty good.
It's a pretty massive card, but I think a lot of people now are leaning into the Forest Sealstone version of the deck, with it's a lot more consistent, being able to use that to search out Colress, having this powerful V attackers, and making it with the Lost Vacuum a little bit easier as well to get to 7 cards, because that's really where Scoop of Net was just a good consistency card, but it was really just about the early game chaining together a bunch of flower selecting so you could get to 7 in the Lost Zone a little quicker. This version of the deck maybe doesn't get through the deck as quickly, but with the Lost Vacuums, you can
still get into that 7.
You can still get to that 7, still activate Mirage
or
Gate.
10. Yeah. So yeah, we got like the turbo builds of Lost Box running right now. I guess the big difference, like the one kind of outlier, I guess, of the Lost Box decks is, I think, like I would say Sablezard, and then also like the ones that actually choose to play Kyogre are kind of the outliers right now. Sablezard's popped up a very little bit, and I think Sablezard actually might have the advantage in the mirror match, because the deck is like built solely to get turn 2 Sableye basically now. So I feel like Sablezard is the advantage in the mirror, but you lose so much power by not playing Mirage Gate, right? So you lose so many options and just heavy hits by not playing Mirage Gate, which I think the number one thing right now is actually not being able to attack with Dragonite. I think Dragonite's insanely good right now. So you kind of lose that. But then when we look at the Mirage Gate builds, the big difference there is like the Sky Seal versus Force Seal. And to be honest, I don't have too big of an opinion on that. The Force Seal, you play 2 of them, you go for like turbo plays of like turn 1 Mirage Gates. The Sky Seal, you're still just attacking with Cram turn 1, usually going second. But you have the fallback of like that bonus prize card later in the game. I haven't played like any with Lost Box since rotation, so I don't really have an opinion here. Some people in my group have been playing quite a bit with the builds. I'm not sure which one they like more, but both seem to be pretty viable.
Yeah, it almost feels like the Forest Seal, like it's like pre-rotation, it was very much like turn 1, let's get off the Mirage Gate attack. I think with either version of the deck, even with the Forest Sealstone version, you're like kind of lucky to get to the turn 1 attack.
I don't know. I think you get it pretty often with like you play heavy vacuum plus Force Sealstone. I think you're getting turn 1 Mirage Gate pretty often.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you can still.
If you go first, you're definitely getting it.
Yeah, well,
turn 2.
That's turn 2.
But if you go second, I think you're getting it a decent amount of the time, and a decent amount of the time as well. It's like you only need it where Cram isn't like a fine attacker to begin with, right? But if Cram's chilling, then you just Cram for the turn.
Yeah, it's not hard to get to Cram turn 1, but getting to 7 turn 1 without Scoop Up Net, even with the Forest Seal. I mean, it's like so many. I've played a little bit of Lost Box, several different versions. I've played a bit of Tina as well, and it feels like there are just less plays of like there's less. You just get to use Comfey less on turn 1 because there's no Scoop Up Net, right? You have less outs to use multiple Comfeys turn 1, and so because of that, your just turns are way less explosive. So a way higher percentage of the time than in the past, you only use 2 flower selectings on turn 1, right?
Yeah. Well, now you can't rely on chaining 2 Comfey there for the whole turn. You have to get like Comfey, switch to Comfey, escape up to Comfey, treat the Comfey with the beach, get the Colress, and then also get the vacuum to get to 7, right? But I don't think that's like too out of the realm of
yeah. Then you got 4 Comfeys in play, bro.
No, you have 3. That's 3 from Comfeys.
You did not count what you just.
I did. Yes, I did. If you go back comment section,
no, you said use Comfey. You said switch to Comfey, and then escape rope to Comfey, and then beach court to Comfey. That's 4 Comfeys.
No, retreat to Comfey. Yes, I meant beach court to your attacker.
Oh, okay, sure.
Yeah.
You said retreat to Comfey.
No, retreat the Comfey.
You said retreat to. Okay, it's fine.
Colin, Chip needs to know he's wrong on this one.
Roll the tape. Roll the tape.
So what was I going to say after that? Yeah, so I think it's like pretty reasonable. I don't actually think it's too hard because then you just need the vacuum plus the Colress, right? And you have 4 Sealstone, which is getting anything, right? So I think getting to 7 turn 1 is actually not too too difficult at all. And sometimes you can just settle for a cram hit, right? Like a percentage of your games where you could get to 7, you don't even have to overextend or even potentially whiff it. You just get to 4, and you're just kind of chilling. So yeah, the deck definitely seems very powerful. I think one thing to kind of take note of online events is when you see a good player pick up Lost Box and play it in one of these online tournaments, I look at winning every time. Like whenever I look at the results of an online tournament, there's usually no Lost Box in top 8, maybe one. But then when it's winning, it's like, oh, a good player chose to play it in this tournament, and they just won the whole tournament, right? So it does seem like it's pretty strong. Once again, I gave Lugia the BDIF in my opinion, but Lost Box I think is right there for sure. It seems to be anyways. A deck that was kind of hyped up as a potential BDIF tier 1 deck that definitely doesn't feel like it sits there anymore though. After like playing with it, seeing its results, it did just win the big tournament in Japan. The Miraidon. What do you think about Miraidon?
Yeah, I like Miraidon just for its like simplicity and consistency. It is really strong. It's definitely like it fits into that beat stick category. I do like playing the Klefki in order to. I think like with Klefki and Judge, if you play like a lot of Judge, you're pretty decent against Lost Box. But I don't know. Maybe it's other matchups. Maybe just feel a little questionable. Like
The Lugia
Lugia.
matchup I think is tough.
Lugia is pretty tough. Mew, I'm not even 100% sure on necessarily. I don't have like Drapion or anything like that right
Without the
now in
Drapion, I think
there.
it is unfavored.
What's up?
Yeah.
Without the
Without the Drapion, I
Drapion?
do think it's unfavored.
Yeah. And then Gardevoir, even I think like Gardevoir
Not
is a close one
yeah.
as well. They can like Gardevoir might just beat you, to be honest. Like Gardevoir is
Yeah,
just
I
pretty
think
good.
I think Miraidon is there's the new Zoroark V-Star. I think it's a little bit better because you can get that big turn 1 attack, but I think it is just a beat stick deck that crumbles to the versatility of some of the other top decks pretty heavily. And overall, it's just not that good. It's a beat stick. We're not in a beat stick format, right? We're not just 2 prizes versus 2 prizes going as fast as possible. There is a little bit more depth to the prize maneuvering in a decent amount enough of the decks where like I feel like Miraidon's just not it right now at all. I think actually that's what's going to happen to Pao Chien. Is that how you say it? Chien Pao.
Chien Pao.
Chien Pao next format. It's going to be, it looks kind of cool with Baxcalibur, but it's just going to be another not bad, but just another tier 3 beat stick deck where it's just like the format's just not 2 prizes hitting each other. So this deck just loses because it's got a bunch of 2 prizes with 220 HP, right?
Sure.
So I think, yeah, that's kind of where Miraidon sits. It's just a slightly better Zoroark V-Star, but not good enough. So we did talk already about Lugia V-Star and being the BDIF. One thing I did want to talk about that a little bit further is a lot of people, I don't think people think the deck is bad. I don't think anyone thinks Lugia is bad, but a lot of people have labeled it as like a high roll deck. They basically not calling it bad, but they're like, why would you play Lugia? You're just going to get Tails on your Mesagoza or get the wrong flip on your capturing Aroma. I have not had that problem at all. I've tried capturing Aroma. I've even tried Great Ball. We'll go a little bit deeper on the Great Ball in just a second. I'm getting turned to Arceus off the discard pile like 80% of my games. So I don't know why people are coming off that Lugia is a high roll deck. It feels about just as consistent as it was last format. I would even maybe feel like I would be more confident with Lugia now than I would be with Lugia last format after my tournament run at Vancouver, where I whiffed turn 2 V-Star like a ton of times. Like, I think Lugia is like, I think when you start flipping coins and playing stuff like Great Ball, where you look at the top random 7 cards, people like to think about those kind of decks as high roll decks. But yeah, I don't think Lugia is that much of a high roll deck at all. I think it's just a very good deck, and just the way the variants pan out, you're just getting there most of the time, right?
Yeah, and I think that's where it's just kind of like people have a wrong way of thinking about it. Like every Pokemon deck, if you analyze it enough, could be considered a high roll deck by these standards, right? Every deck has its own variance as far as, if you're playing one-ofs and you prize a piece, or like needing to do very specific things like discarding 2 Archeops, like odds of opening with 2 Archeops or opening with your 2 Evolution Instants or whatever. And then odds of like, flipping, like, I mean, if you think about like Mew and stuff like that, like, can we call Mew maybe Mew is even more of a high roll deck. I don't know.
I mean, if the Meloetta build, I think a lot of people would call it that. Although I don't think Meloetta Mew is that much of a high roll deck either.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a good example of a high roll deck, because I think that does exist. I don't want to say that doesn't exist. I'm trying to think
maybe
of a good...
Rayquaza GX from that Worlds in 2018.
Yeah, I think that... I don't even know if that was... You're pretty consistent. Like, that one felt... There was a lot of variance in like your... But it was like, if on average, you'd be able to come out in a pretty good spot. I don't even know if maybe that we could call that one a high roll deck, because I think if you give a
I feel
bunch
like
of
I
people
even
that
remember
deck,
Pedro calling it a high roll deck, and he got top 4 with it,
yeah, I think if you
saying
gave a bunch
like,
of people that deck, a bunch of good players that deck, some of them would do well and some of them would do terrible.
yeah.
But it would be hard to like consistently push for like being in a good spot with the deck like that. Or if you gave a bunch of good players Zoro Garb, they're probably all pushing for top 8 or close to it, like top 16 and so on. So I think that'd be a good example. I think you're actually right. But the big discussion around Lugia recently, like I mentioned, capturing Aroma versus Great Ball and Jake Gearhart.
Yeah.
This is why we love Jake Gearhart, is went overly in depth on the analysis of capturing Aroma versus Great Ball. And actually, to be honest, I haven't looked at this yet, so I assume the conclusion is, wait, what is the conclusion?
Capturing Aroma is 4.47% better at finding Archeops in Lugia decks than Great Ball at the start of the game. So it's just about early parts of the game, and he linked this formula and this graph. I know what none of this means. So I'm glad we've got our resident community AI, Jake Gearhart, on the job to to generate these odds for us, because I could not do it. He says Great Ball becomes better at 40 cards in deck or with more desired non-basic Pokemon. So like he's just looking to get evolution Pokemon specifically out of the deck.
Yeah.
Which you do want to get a V-Star out at some point as well.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's definitely interesting. I mean, to me, search just feels better than random, right? Because capturing Aroma is going to guarantee you get something, right? And on turn 1, you need a lot. And what's kind of interesting as well is if you're playing Burnett, it doesn't matter what you flip on capturing Aroma, you're going to get Archeops, because you either flip heads and get an Archeops itself, or you flip tails and you go get Luminion, and Luminion gets you Burnett, which discards 2 Archeops, right?
And that's the best argument I think I've seen for why capturing Aroma is just kind of, and and that's the thing, like you can do this math, but there's still so many situationals to think about. At so like Jake said, at 40 cards less in deck, at 40 cards or less in deck, Great Ball becomes better, right?
But it depends on how many evolutions you've pulled out of those first 40 cards, right? Like,
yeah, but pull out that's true though. Like, what is that including once you, like, even if you have 3 Archeops left in deck, if you already have 1 in the discard pile, is that accounting for that? I actually don't even know. I assume not. I guess.
don't know.
So yeah, if Jake listens to this, Jake, if you want to give a little bit more in depth of the explanation in the comment sections, I don't know how well you explained the analysis of it in the comments on Twitter. I can't read all of them right now. If you did it pretty in depth over there, then no need. But
I mean, if you can understand the math that, I mean, he showed his work, like if this was a high school paper, he would get credit because he showed his work. But
yeah. But yeah, I don't know like how many other situations this accounts for, right? Because the Burnett situation, if you go first and you just play a research, now you're at 40 or less cards, right? For 7 from deck,
clicking here,
or it's 8 from deck, so you'll be at 39 at the very least. Stuff. At the very least, 39 cards left in deck, right? Because prize cards, 8 in hand, play research, draw 7. If you play Great Ball from there, but if you've already pulled out an Archeops, so you only have 3 Archeops left in deck. Like what? Like there's so many situations to come up with. All I have is like, and this is why like I think playing with both and just experiencing both would give you kind of unlock the true like to truly know which.
You just gotta go with the vibes, gotta go with.
And we see people on both sides, right? Like Jake Gearhart is on the math. I don't even know if Jake has said if they prefer capturing Aroma or Great Ball, or maybe they just did the math, or just like this is the math. But I know James Arnold is a huge fan of Great Ball. I know Isaiah Bradner is a fan of capturing Aroma. When I've played the deck with both, I just get turn 2 Archeops every game anyway, so I have no idea which one is better. But I've definitely had situations with both where it's like capturing Aroma can't guarantee this here, but then I Great Balled into like a T-Tar, and I've had situations where it's like I just need to get this evolution here, and then I play the Aroma and I go get the guaranteed evolution, or capturing Aroma just even guaranteed grabbing a Pokemon out of your deck no matter what to thin it out further is also like a factor as well. Because like in the mid late game, Great Ball is not guaranteed anything, but capturing Aroma heads or tails will probably get you a basic or an evolution, because you do play the 4 Archeops 4 V-Stars. It'll probably always be able to get you an evolution. So yeah, I don't know. I played both, and both have felt pretty good, but I would probably lean towards Aroma being the way to go. But it's really hard to calculate all those situationals that come up that could make one theoretically better than the other.
It's like theoretically there is a mathematical correct answer, but there are so many possible variables that it's probably impossible
worth
to
the time to get
calculate,
there?
right? Like
Yeah.
it's got to be close to
Um,
impossible to calculate. I
but
don't know.
as far as growing and trying to become a better player, don't let coin flips sway you as to why you do or do not play a card. If there's just a general consensus, and you're not going to go out of your way to do the math to figure out if Capturing Aroma is better than Great Ball, but the general consensus is Capturing Aroma is greater than Great Ball in your Lugia deck, you should just be playing Capturing Aroma. And I think that's like a big part in just like understanding the statistical side of Pokemon and kind of giving into it, almost just letting the statistics take control of some of your decisions in gameplay choices and deck building, and not kind of overly thinking about it or trying to prove or just trying to be like, I'm right because this feels better, right? So I think that is
Sure.
like something you can take. A lot of players can take to just grow and become better players. Is just like let the statistics just take over. If it says it's correct for this reason, if the statistics say something is correct, just believe it and kind of move on to the next thing. You just go spend your time, doing something else, and don't go off your feelings of I don't like flipping coins. It doesn't matter if you don't like flipping coins. But the only thing that matters is trying to win as much as possible, right? So don't let your feelings get in the way of that.
If you
Um,
don't like flipping coins, a deck you could definitely play would be Gardevoir, one of the better
hey, some
new
people play
decks to come
Mazagoza.
out. What's up?
Some people play Mezagoza and Guardy, so there's some
Oh,
flips.
okay. Might be some flips. Might be some flips. No, it's not quite a flip-free zone here with the Gardevoir
Not quite.
deck. But yeah, Gardevoir has definitely been pretty hyped up as well. It currently on Play Limitless is the 4th most popular deck. It did do pretty decently over in Japan those first couple tournaments, but in the more recent Miyagi Champions League, there's only one in the top 16. Yeah, and we've seen a few different lists emerge as well with the Gardevoir. Matchups wise, it has a pretty bad Lost Box matchup, which I think is like the
Yeah.
biggest deterrent for it right now. People are trying to find answers of ways to beat it. We've seen the jellies, the healing, all that stuff. In your experience, Azul, I don't know, you haven't played much Lost Box, but you've played a bit of Gardevoir, I think, right?
Yeah.
How have you felt about the Lost Box matchup, or just maybe the matchup spread in general?
I mean, I think one of Gardevoir's biggest struggles to begin with is consistency. So I've been playing builds that have like no healing, 4 research, 4 level ball, 4 fall crystal, 4 VIP pass. Um, no research, no healing. I tried out the Mewtwo V Union build because you can fit that into the build a little bit with a more aggressive build a little bit better. The Mewtwo V Union is basically a dead card in every matchup besides the Lost Box matchup. But even in the Lost Box matchup, I feel like they can still get too far ahead sometimes. Or they can kind of set their board state up to actually deal with the Mewtwo V Union, like just by like preemptively putting down Drapion basically and being like, okay, you're gonna have Mewtwo V Union next turn. Well, I'm just gonna bench Drapion with an energy this turn or 2 energy, or I've built it up over a couple turns and just be like, you have to like boss this now, right?
Yeah.
So
So then they can't Roxanne you.
yeah, I think Gardevoir, if Lost Box didn't exist, if you just like remove Lost Box and didn't fill that void with anything, I think Guardy would be the best deck in the format by far. I think Guardy like destroys like almost every other deck in the format. Like if it's a 2 Bryze deck, you just win. And I'm playing like the build without any rare candy, no aggressive attacks. The Mewtwo V Union is meh. I've cut it. I'm just like straightforward consistency, beating everything that's not Lost Box pretty handedly. So I would say in my current take on Gardevoir is once you start teching for the Lost Box matchup and you go to like a judge build, the deck just kind of becomes it lowers itself to the level of basically every other deck in the format. I feel like where you don't have those strong your matchups are like 50-50s against like the Arctinas and the Miraidons and stuff. Whereas before, if you just go with a straight consistency build, you're like heavily favored, like 60-40s, even maybe a little bit more in some of those matchups. So I feel like it's not worth even teching for Lost Box because even at the point where you're teching for Lost Box, the matchup is still like 50-50. Like even with
Yeah,
the
even
healing
if
build,
you're
I
trying
feel
to
like it could
cram
be
like some
unfavored.
Klefki in there or something like that, right?
Yeah,
Like
there's like too much stuff. Just I think being consistent, like I think being consistent and maybe taking the risk of just not hiding Lost Box is just the way to go. Because I
even
don't
for
think Lost Box.
EUIC, you think? Like, I
I
mean,
mean, Lost Box isn't like Lugia levels of popular, right? It's
sure.
not going to be a 30%er, maybe 20, but I don't even think it'll get to 20. Um, and then its conversion rate's just not going to be good. I think everyone can agree. No one's going to disagree on that. Like the conversion rate of Lost Box day 1 to day 2 is just not going to be that high. So I think it could be a reasonable risk, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely interesting. I think I could see it.
Something to think about.
So you're kind of off the V Union train then, because I know you were liking it for a while. You played it on your stream and seemed to like it at least, right?
Yeah, it's cool, but I like never used it. I like it's like the games that I used it, I could have also just clawed for another station. I would have wanted it.
Yeah, sure,
Also,
sure.
that's actually a cool thing that I've seen recently. Second station over the second recovery
I
card.
do like two
Um,
Zacian, yeah.
Yeah, which I think I do like, because the second one you don't want to like use them back to back in the mid game, but using the second one to just be like your end game closer is like really really nice.
I mean, and if you're playing No Rare Candy, it's your best thing to do on turn 2, right? Is just take a
Yeah,
prize with Zacian usually.
if you can. It's sometimes hard to line that up, but you don't even need. You can like give them 2 prize cards and still win the prize check in most matchups. So, yeah, the deck's just Guardy's really good. Big fan.
Yeah, seems strong. Yeah, we'll see what happens though with Guardy at EUIC as well. Interesting to hear the No Rare Candy build is what you have liked the best. I guess it does like maybe make the deck feel more streamlined. I would be maybe the thing to think about there, right?
Yeah, definitely, because you're not getting like turn 2 candy that often. Anyways, you're getting a lot more with a research build though. Like research plus Mew is pretty good at finding the combo, but it feels like unnecessary and unnecessary dip into your consistency to run that. I can even see like running maybe just like 2 rare candy to be honest though, because it can help in your like late game with just like making sure you have enough guardies to close out the game. But yeah, guardy's pretty good. Not BDIF I don't think, because Lost Box is out there still, but very solid deck. A deck that was considered BDIF I feel like though. Kind of had like that hype like Miraidon early on in the format, and now this deck I actually just don't think is that good. But Tor did put it in S tier in his what's it called? Tier list. Is Lost Tina. A lot of people were like hyping up his DIF going into the format. I feel like early, and has not really had that much success at all. The little I played with it and played against it, it just seems like the same clunky deck that it was, pre, or like when it was played pre Lugia.
Yeah, Lost Tina feels like playing just a strong Lost Box deck, but you have 2 prize liabilities almost. Like the game
and like getting to your 2 prize
finishes
liabilities
faster as well, like which
Yeah.
isn't good. Like so, I think Lost Tina was better pre Lugia, right? It was better than maybe just straight Lost Box. But then Lugia came out and then kind of pushed Lost Tina out of the format because Tina just gave up 2 prize cards, right? It was just too much of a liability, and Lost Box needed to focus on having 6 full turns to come back into the game a lot of the time. Where if you're playing Giratina down, you don't have that. And I feel like we're maybe still a little bit too much in that, where putting down a 2 prize Pokemon almost feels as a Lost Zone deck like you're giving your opponent too much of a chance to get back ahead in the prize race.
Yeah, I mean you're putting him down in like the Mirage Gate builds too, right? But they were like being more aggressive with those to make sure you're like trading 2 for 2. And then I feel like it's just like the consistency of being able to utilize it.
Yeah, you have to like put down Tina and attach to it and say, please don't knock this out this turn. Yeah.
Yeah. You're not being aggressive with this. I just don't think it's that good. I would like to be always down to be proven wrong, but yeah, Tina's like on this like I feel like it's like a tier 3 deck.
I do think it is more consistent though than regular Lost Box. It has felt to me at least. And that's a lot. I feel like the turn 2 Abyss Seeking or turn 1 Abyss Seeking. Turn 1 Abyss Seeking. Yeah, bro. Turn 1 Abyss Seeking.
What do you do? You're already losing the game.
I mean, it depends on what you're playing. If you're playing against something like Guardy, though, it's like that's fine.
I'm swinging with Crayon, bro. I'm trying to get that knockout.
I mean, that's fair.
That price card.
Against Klefki decks, maybe more specifically, but that is feel like has slowed. The format has moved away from that a little bit. It was really like the first few days on TCG Live. What are you doing right now? You playing with some dice?
Yeah, I picked some up, dropped them down by accident.
I feel like the first few days on TCG Live, like I just played a bunch of Klefki decks, right? And then it was like when I played Lost Tina, it was okay because I just go Abyss Seeking, find my escape rope, and then boom, I'm chilling next turn.
Oh yeah, we're good. Got the Abyss Seeking. Can't lose. I don't think Lost on Tina is very good. I think it's just like kind of a pile. It's just like not consistent enough. It has too many weird situations. And then like you don't have enough other strong attackers that aren't the Tinas to actually kind of beat the 2 prize trading decks without your Tinas, and you just try to fall apart from there. I feel like an interesting comeback, I guess, has been I guess it's less of an Urshifu deck than it is an Inteleon VMAX deck, but it's been kind of like this rapid strike box type deck where you got the Urshifu VMAX, Inteleon VMAX, Radiant Alakazam to move some damage around that you have to ping them with the double gunner ability of the Inteleon, and then you got the Metagame. It's a really cool deck. And I actually think it might be better than I currently think it is, but I just haven't had any time to play it. So Um, yeah, my opinion is kind of uncertain about this one, but I think
I
it's
have
cool.
not played it either. I've watched a few people play it though, and the amount of plays you can make with it is super cool, right? And just so much is opened up to you thanks to the double gunner, thanks to the Alakazam, and thanks to the Metacham, right? Stealing an extra turn is super strong. You can also, of course, get that Gmax rapid flow in there. Like there is a ton you can do
Yeah,
with this deck. Like, and especially whenever you're trying to create the plays where you're yoga looping a Manaphy in order to rapid flow the next turn, like 2 turns in a row, not give them a chance to even get Manaphy back. I mean, that's really cool. I think that this is probably a more difficult deck to play as well, just because there is so many things you want to try to set
yeah,
up, or you have so many different
definitely.
paths to try to take at least. But I do also kind of feel a little underwhelmed by this deck.
Yeah, that's the way it's kind of felt from what I've seen. A little bit that I've played against it. Haven't really played it, like I said. I played against it a couple times. What I've seen, yeah, I'm not digging it at all. But it would be one of those things I'd like love it to be, a good deck. Speaking of good decks that I actually think are bad in the current meta is Mew. I think Mew's super powerful right now, but when you look at the matchup spread that you got kind of going on, unfavored against Lost Box, Miraidon's unfavored if they got Drapion, Lugia's unfavored, Gardevoir's unfavored. Is there a reason to play Mew right now? Do you think? I don't think so.
I think Mew's pretty good.
I think you're trolling.
I think Mew is super consistent. It's the most consistent deck in the format, like for sure.
Hmm.
And I'm
Oh,
talking
that's
about
a
just
quick
double
call.
turbo Mew. I definitely still prefer double turbo Mew to like the Fusion Strike build. Um, I don't think you lose to Lost Box with Path Judge spam. You do have to kind of like spam it, and like you got to play a lot more paths than normal. But it almost, I feel like maybe the way to play it right now would be like that. You remember that tournament that you won where you played like 4 path, 4 lost vacuum Mew? Like, I feel like
Yeah.
that build of the deck could be pretty good right now.
Yeah. I mean, it's been doing well, I think, as far as the double turbo Mews. I've been going a bit less techy, more towards that kind of
Yeah.
more path control oriented. I just don't think like even then, like even though you got that judge path spam going on, I think your Lost Box matchup is still unfavorable. Like I said, I think you come up short against Guardy. And then Tina, like even lost Tina, they got like Drapion, like all these matchups. I
Yeah,
think you're,
Tina is probably the toughest matchup of the top decks. I
yeah,
think you can beat Lost Zone and
I
Lugia
don't know. Lugia's pretty
Archeops.
tough.
I think Lugia, I don't know. I mean, it almost feels like the same as it was before, where it's like sometimes you just win because you go judge path them out of the game. But
Yeah,
yeah, that's pretty much, I guess, your best shot there. But like you also, I think, can just trade favorably if you go first, right?
yeah,
Two, and
yeah.
then they
I
take.
mean, not really. They have Teach. They always win the prize trade theoretically, or
Yeah, I
like they
mean,
get
if
the
they
Evital
pull off,
involved.
I mean, yeah, sure. I
The
mean,
Evital, I think, is like a
if off of
really
Judge
strong
Path
attacker in
they
that
get
matchup.
T-Tar attacking your VMAX, yeah, sure, they're gonna win.
If they got
But
the Evital, I think they're cooking. That card is super good against
yeah,
Mew because you can
but a
like
lot
load
of
up.
lists have not been playing the Evital. A lot of
Yeah, it's
lists
been
have
getting
not been
cut.
playing it.
Well, that's because Mew sucks, and there's no reason to tech for Mew. That's
I
why.
do think like if there's ever been a tournament to, I mean, like this is a tournament where you can go in with a deck that loses to Mew and be just fine with that,
Oh yeah,
right?
definitely,
For
100%.
sure.
Yeah, I don't think there's any reason to. I mean, you should like if you're playing like Lost Box, you should play a Drapion, but like there's no reason to tech for Mew like
Yeah.
overly. Like you don't need to go out of your way. Like you've seen like the Arctinas, none of them play Drapion for the most part, right? Like they have 4 path, 4 judge. They just go 50-50 against the Mew, whatever that might be. And I think they're just kind of fine with that. Yeah, I wouldn't tech for Mew. I don't think it'll do very well. I've been seeing some people say that they think the fusion build is the better way to play the deck right now, which I think you have better matchups against like the Lugia and stuff with the fusion build. But I think your Lost Box matchup suffers so hard if you go the fusion route. It can't be worth the trade off if a Lost Box is the number 1 deck, right? So, yeah, I wouldn't pick up Mew. For me to get convinced to play Mew for EUIC, I'd have to get beaten up real bad with it in this next week of testing, which is possible, I guess, but I don't think it's going to happen. Speaking of the Arctina, though, um, Arceus in general, like Arctina seems to be the way to go. I don't know if we have to talk too much about that, but do you think there's any other variant of Arceus that can kind of compete with Arctina's kind of like that's the way to play Arceus, or is that just the way to play Arceus?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen some flying Pikachu things pop up. I think I watched LDF stream playing a Vulpix version of the deck. He also like got 9th in the tournament with Tina plus flying Pikachu
The whole
in
squad.
the deck. Like he was just playing everything there. Um, yeah, I do think overall Arctina is probably the best way to go. And I mean, I think in theory it seems fine, right? Like Arceus is just pretty solid against Lost Box. It's got a
Yep.
lot of HP. You can play Sharon's Care in there as well if you want to make it even
Yep.
a little bit better. And then
Poor
Tina
Judge,
just
poor
nukes
Pack.
everything else in the format, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think it's solid. Yeah, and that might be the best way. I think Arceus is good right now for sure. I just don't know what the best attacker is with it, but it seems like Tina is probably the way to go. Um, Speaking of like big Pokemon, I think one last deck to kind of talk about, just slightly here. It's been kind of making it come up recently. Is the Lost Zone Goodra? I think mostly this has kind of seen a decent amount of successes because your Lost Box matchup has always been pretty good. I think it's still probably pretty good.
Yeah.
But your Lugia matchup, I think it's favorable, has gone from unfavorable to favorable, which is a pretty big swing.
Yeah, it turns out not having Evil Tall is pretty tough for Lugia to get around these Pokemon that
Yeah.
do a bunch of reduced or take a bunch of reduced damage. You can still, I don't know. I mean, I guess Lugia could build in a way, like if Lugia started playing rope, right? Like, and that's kind of the thing, where Lugia, like even last format, right, could build to beat things. But like Goodra, such a small meta share deck, like it does seem okay right now. And it could be a situation where it's underrated again. And I think that's something that we constantly did last format was underrate Goodra,
It
or
still is unfavored
we
against
just
Lugia. So I think we always
we
just,
didn't
yeah.
respect it, I think, as much as, compared to what its results were, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Um
It did have some decent results, but I think even all the Goodra players would be like, yeah, I'm slightly unfavored against Lugia at the very least, right?
yeah. Yeah, even the guy who got top 8 with Goodra, not the guy who ended up winning, but the guy who got top 8 with Goodra, I talked to him a little bit in what was this last tournament? Fort Wayne. And he was like, yeah, I'm just really hoping to, like, I would like to not play any Lugias pretty much.
Yeah, it's like a crazy thing to say when it's 25. I guess it was like 22% of the meta there, so the Goodra
Yeah.
players were loving that for sure. But yeah, I guess like to kind of wrap up this to wrap up our EUIC discussion, like we've kind of done in the past with some other major tournaments, do a couple predictions for EUIC. First one we got here is, what region will the champion be from? Chip?
I mean, mathematically, you got to go with Europe, but off the vibes, off the feels, it's USA, baby. I didn't pick USA for our last 2 predictions for this. I got flamed a little bit in the comments. We're going USA all day. Come on, get the dub.
I'm gonna go with. Of course, I'm gonna try and win the tournament myself, but I'm gonna go with Latin America because if I don't win it, I think it'd be cool to see Gustavo get the three-peat. That'd just be kind of a cool
3
thing to see.
EUICs in a row. Yeah, that would
Yeah,
be pretty
3 EUICs
wild.
in a row from Gustavo would be pretty cool. So I'm gonna go with Latin America on that one.
Tord starts sweating a little bit. Gustavo catching up, huh?
It's only EUIC every time. Gustavo has won like 8 ICs 4 years from now, 5 years from now. Or it'll be 7 years from now. Just all UICs.
So we talked about Giratina V-Star a little bit. We've talked about how a lot of top players have kind of identified it as the best deck in the format.
Or he's a tier
You
1, right?
seem to not think that it is the strongest, the Lost Zone version of Giratina. You seem to think it's not
Yeah.
very good. What do you think the highest placing Giratina V-Star deck will be in this
I'm gonna
tournament?
go with. I mean, it's still not a terrible deck. I think it's one of those decks where I think it's just like on the. It's just like there's no reason to play it because there's a lot of other decks that are just better than it. But it's not bad. I think a lot of people still really like it, and I could see some good players picking up. So I think top 16 will be my prediction. Like I'm not too far out, but
Dang,
I'm
you
not a fan
yoinked
of
my
it.
prediction. I was gonna say top 16, but I'll give it a little bit more credit. I'll go with the top 8. I'll give it a top 8 finish. Someone sneaks in. And speaking of top 8, surprise deck to make top 8. Maybe something we didn't talk about here. There's a few other fringe decks out there in the format, or maybe something that we talked about that you don't think is very good, but you think there's a chance it could sneak in there.
Surprise deck. Hey, let me look at like a metagame breakdown real fast. So I can just kind of
Well, you're
jog my
thinking I can go
memory
ahead and make
on.
my call.
Okay, if you got one, go for it.
I'm calling Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX, baby. Shadow Rider in top 8. Let's make it happen. It's such a strong card. Meta's not been very good for it recently, in like
It's
over
like
a
a pseudo
year.
control deck
But
now.
there's less Mew. There's
Its Mew
Lugia
matchup is
looks
good.
a lot different. Its Mew matchup's good.
Well, yeah, because you should just shadow lock them.
Oh,
It's like a
sure,
pseudo
sure,
control
sure.
deck. Shadow Eye is
The
just
little
like a pseudo control
cheese.
deck
Yeah,
now.
yeah, yeah.
Um, let's see if you're going with the Shadow Rider. I guess I'll go with. I'm actually surprised. Like, I guess it kind of makes sense. It kind of sucks. You know, we were kind of hyping up Radiant E-Turn going into this meta, but we forgot that Quick Ball rotates. You literally can't find your Radiant E-Turn turn 1 if you go first. Like, it's not impossible. We only have 4 Ultra Ball, right?
Yeah. I mean,
I
but
think
that
that's
was
one
like
thing.
enough for such a long time, right?
For what?
For like every format in the past.
Yeah, but finding Radiant E-Turn turn 1 to use it to get your VMAXs,
Sure.
I feel like you lost, like you needed more outs to it. That's why we hadn't seen it at all, I feel like. But yeah, I'll pick a fringe deck. I don't know. There's not that much. I think is Goodra fringe. Can I go with Goodra? I
I
think
think you
that's
can go
fair.
with Goodra. I'll give you
All
Goodra.
right. All right. I'll go with Goodra in the top 8. I feel like it's pretty strong right now. It's definitely one of those. And I like decks like Goodra where it feels like you got some good matchups, you got some bad matchups, and then the deck is still viable like because of that. Where I felt like in the past or in some metas, it's like you either play one of the top 3 decks that are 50-50 against each other, or you just can't play anything. So it definitely feels like Goodra is one of those decks in this meta where it's like it's got its good, it's got its bad. I don't think it's gonna win, but then what will win, Chip? What is your prediction on what deck will win the tournament?
Yes, one final prediction. I mean, there's a lot of things I think you could go with that would be pretty safe bets here, like a Lost Box deck or a Lugia, Miraidon question mark, Mew VMAX. I think I'm gonna play it safe on this one since I had to go with the top 8 for Giratina. Didn't want to. I'm gonna go with Lugia. I think Lugia reigns supreme on the format once again. Everyone's so excited for rotation, but it's just Lugia V-Star on top once more.
Yeah, I could see that. I'm gonna go with Guardy. I think we could see a Guardy sneak past the Lost Boxes,
All right, Azul's playing Guardy.
or
Here we go.
run hot enough. I guess with the tech cards, like if you're gonna tech it out, you could run hot enough to beat enough of the Lost Boxes and not come up a little bit short in some of your other matchups. So
Maybe you just dodge them. Maybe someone just dodges them all, right?
I mean, that's what I'd want to see is like a Guardy build just be like, all right, I lose the Lost Box, but I beat everything else. Let's go. Like I even cut Manaphy from my most recent build of Guardy because I was like, well, if I lose the Lost Box, why am I playing this? And I don't respect Lost Tina enough to be like, well, I think with Manaphy, Lost Tina matchup's not terrible. Without Manaphy, it probably gets pretty bad. But I don't respect Lost Tina enough to probably play it. So I was just like, I'm just gonna cut the Manaphy and put in a second Mew because Mew's really good, and I already lose the Lost Box. So yeah, let's go with the Guardy.
We'll see what happens. Just a few short days away. I'm going to be watching along from home with a bunch of other people. We'll be rooting you on, Azul. Hopefully, you can bring another one home for America and for the Uncommon Energy podcast. Rooting for you, buddy.
I'll do my best. Yeah, I've been carrying all of our IC dubs, bro. You got to step it up and get one of those.
Me? Listen, I'm going to play one more regionals this year, okay? And we'll see what we can make happen.
All right, let's do it.
All right.
Send us home, Chip.
Yeah, that's going to do it for this week's episode. Thanks so much for everyone for listening. We appreciate the support as always. As always, if you want to show your support, go that little extra mile. Take just a second, leave us a review on your favorite podcasting platform or drop us a comment over on the YouTube video. All those things help us out so much. We're actually super close to 5,000 subscribers
We
on
might
the
actually
YouTube
get there
channel.
before this goes live. I think we're like super close.
I think we're like 10 away or something like that. So
Oh, we're 90 away.
90 away. Okay.
So that can definitely be made happen with this episode. And if it didn't, that'd actually be kind of
it.
shameful.
Come on, subscribe. All right.
You can do it.
You can do it. If you guys want to stay connected with us, the best place to do that is over on Twitter. You can follow myself at Chip Ritchie. Azul is at Azul_GG. You can follow the podcast at Uncommon_Energy. We'll probably be live next week on. Are you fine back? You're probably
I
fine
get back
back
Sunday.
Monday.
So yeah, we'll be back. We'll be back on normal.
Oh, we'll be back on
Sunday.
Tuesday next week. Okay, normal schedule next week. Cool.
Well, we're normal scheduled this week as well.
That is true.
Yeah. We'll be back on schedule, just like we were this week. Appreciate the support as always. Good luck to everyone who's going to EUIC. Huge shout out. Or once again, super happy to be working with Dragon Shield. Go check them out. Best sleeves in the business. As we mentioned before, yeah, super happy to be working with them here on the podcast and having them be a partner, a sponsor, whatever you want to call it. Just super excited to be working with them over here with Uncommon Energy. And yeah, we'll catch you all next week.